be distracted.
Wow. I did not see that coming.
That's insane. This endgame is just totally lost. He's tied hand and foot. He can't move the knight. He can't move the rook. And he has resigned. What a display by Kasparov.
Very nice attack.
Bouncing back after that last game. That looked like a draw. Now it looks like he's going to lose. Queen takes, and he lost the game. He blundered in this moment.
Am I missing something?
No, you're not. And Short missed after a heroic defense, missed a draw, and ended up losing the game. Hello and welcome to St. Louis, the capital of chess in America, where we are poised to see the Battle of the Legends, a match between former world champion Garry Kasparov and his challenger Nigel Short. There we see inside of the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis as the fans are prepared to watch this epic showdown, day 2, about to start in just a few minutes. Well, welcome everyone. I am Maurice. I'm here with Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez. And Alejandro, yesterday was truly an epic day. We watched a legend, Kasparov, show why he's one of the top players in the history of the game. He plays such amazing attacking chess, scintillating style, the kind of stuff that the fans want to see and expected to see from this kind of great legend.
This is the kind of Kasparov that, you read about, you dream about. This is the kind of player that inspires kids to play chess. He's aggressive, he has the initiative, he sacrifices, he doesn't care about what his opponent is trying to do. He says, I'm here, I'm going to impose my will over the game. And he did it wonderfully. Short did manage to win a game yesterday, but even in that game, he was suffering tremendously.
In fact, Short was simply dominated in the match. When you look at it, it was incredible how, if not for that one game, he would just be getting blown away completely in the match.
Absolutely. It's very important that Short comes back fighting from the first game today. He has white in the first rapid. He has to say, I'm here. I'm going to prove my own style. I'm going to prove why I'm still a top active player in the world. And he has to go away from the plan that he had yesterday of skewing theoretical battles and saying, hey, I'm playing well. I'm going to say, I'm white. I'm here. I'm going to win.
Well, let's see if he can do that. But first, let's take a look at the results from yesterday. After a draw in the first game between the players in the rapid, the blitz was all Kasparov except for the hiccup in game 2 that he lost on time. It was just Garry, and now he's up 3.5 to 1.5. Potentially an overwhelming score, but we got to wonder whether or not Nigel can somehow get over that jet lag, as he said yesterday, and maybe come back. And he's looking quite dapper there, the Brit. One of the world's top players still, the oldest player in the top 100 in the world. He's actually number 60 in the world at the moment. Just came off winning the Thai Open just last week and in form, at least before facing off against Garry.
Absolutely, and Nigel said it yesterday, in blitz, sometimes you're on your game, sometimes not so much. Perhaps yesterday he wasn't able to show his best games of chess. Let's see if today he can come back and with a vengeance.
So when we saw him play against Garry before, particularly in the World Championship match, we saw a lot of aggressive openings. He was playing e4, he was playing, letting Garry play Najdorf Sicilians. He was attacking, he was trying to rip Garry apart. Okay, it didn't work, but still, he was aggressive. Why do you think he's playing this kind of KG, B3, G3? Let's just call it crap. I mean, it's just, what's the point?
I think he was simply trying to get Kasparov out of his element. He figures Kasparov is a little rusty, but the Najdorf, it's like in his blood. The King's Indian defense in his blood. Maybe if I can get him out of that, maybe he'll have to think a little bit. Maybe he won't feel so comfortable. Kasparov showed none of that business.
Dude was very comfortable.
None of that business.
Yeah, he was absolutely just playing fast chess quickly, especially after he lost on time. And Kasparov is like a wounded animal. Every time he
Absolutely.
loses a game, the worst thing that you can do is beat him. Because the next game, whoever he plays is in trouble, and he showed that against Short, just demolished him in that next game. And then the last game, Short should have drawn the game. That was very surprising. He should have drawn, but he didn't manage to find this simple solution.
And that happens sometimes in blitz. You become unaware of what's going on. You're just playing on instinct. And he still had enough time to actually think for just a couple of seconds about which pawn to move. Had he found the right one, it's a very, very basic draw. It's unfortunate for him, but hey, at the end of the day, it's also pretty fortunate he won on time.
Yes, so it kind of balances it out. And that game he won on time, Garry was trebled on the B file, totally owning the position, as a matter of fact, before he was able to come back, Nigel, with some counterplay. But then that clock, the lack of awareness on Kasparov's part cost him in that game. I don't think you're going to see any of that today. I think the games are going to be even more accurate today.
Absolutely not. Kasparov is very well aware of the clock situation now. Now, on the other hand, Nigel is, as he mentioned yesterday, he's not used to this delay. I think having played a full match with delay yesterday, he's going to come into day 2 with a better understanding of how the clock works, a better understanding of how to use the clock to put on pressure, noticing that Kasparov was a little bit slow in some of the games, and maybe we'll see him play even faster.
It's interesting because Garry really showed some stuff with the black pieces. I mean, 2 of his wins were scintillating with the black pieces. So interesting to take a look at. Maybe you want to show one of the games there where Garry was just incredible. He played black like most people say you take a draw with black. Garry says, I don't play any of that. He's never been that kind of player, and he always plays to win with either color and even with the black pieces.
Right, and if we can get the analysis board, we have Kasparov being exactly the kind of player that he was feared for being. He was a very aggressive player. He didn't really care about some strategical elements if he thought he had the initiative. You can see that the pawn structure on the queen side was completely annihilated early in the game.
And by the way, here we see Garry Kasparov on the other side. The graphic has him. He did win the game, but he was black in this game.
He was black in this game. And he played the move h4. He realized, hey, in the long run, I don't really have a chance. My pawns are very weak. But look at these pieces. My knight on g4 is already on the king side. This knight on b2 is far away from the defense. I'm going to use the little time that I have to create a strong initiative. h4 right away. G takes h4, king g7. All the rooks came into play, and it seemed like even though maybe here white has some defensive resources, no way. Kasparov allowed none of that.
You don't want to play like this against Garry Kasparov. The guy rips your king apart and then starts attacking with rooks down the h-file, and that's exactly what happened. He got destroyed in that game, did Short. Well, let's go now to Tony Rich for a few introductory announcements.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the exciting finale of the Battle of the Legends between Garry Kasparov and Nigel Short, Grandmasters. Yesterday was a very exciting day. We enjoyed the Rapid and the 4 Blitz games so much that we're going to do the exact same thing today. Nigel will start out with the white pieces in the Rapid game, then we'll alternate colors for 4 Blitz games after that. As far as schedule goes, this game will begin here in just a couple of moments, and then the Blitz games will begin at 3:15, and they typically start about every 15 minutes or so. I want to thank the players especially for joining us and putting on some exciting chess and creating beautiful masterpieces that all of their fans will study around the world. And I want to wish them both the very best of luck. Without further ado, let's begin.
And the game has begun. Nigel Short now taking off the kid gloves and deciding to play e4 by choice. And I think we're going to see open Sicilian, a knight. That's after knight to f6, knight to c3, and will a6 appear on the board? Kasparov hesitating.
It's his favorite defense. He must use it. Absolutely.
And he has done it. And he has done it. Expect a wild game. Oh, g3.
But actually, maybe he's being influenced by a very recent game. Michael Adams used this to crush Anish Giri in Shamkir International only a couple of days ago, and it was an amazing aggressive game where white pushed all of his pawns on the king side, annihilated black. So maybe here Short's using a little bit of technique from his countryman.
Well, maybe he should have tried this yesterday, maybe too little, too late, or will it be right on time? Kasparov already stopping to think, going back into his database of thousands of novelties, variations that he's played over the years. He's been prepared for everything. This guy was one of the most feared opening theoreticians, maybe of all time. I mean, he could always drop a novelty on you in just about any opening. He was absolutely prolific, and now he's got to think, what does this guy have prepared for me?
He has to remember, what was it that I prepared in this variation, and which style does he want to play? There's so many ways to deal with the move g3. Garry tried to play it a little bit of Scheveningen style with the move e6. And after e6, we get a very classical Najdorf. But the problem is that sometimes this bishop goes to g2, and then white simply pushes f4, g4, g5 quicker than he does in the normal variations. Actually, in the Adams-Garry game, Adams was simply a tempo up compared to the normal lines. Another way is to play a dragon style, play g6, put the bishop on g7, say, hey, the move a6, perhaps not the most useful in the dragon structures, but you've committed yourself to not playing a Yugoslav attack by putting the bishop on g2 instead.
And he's gone a totally different route and played the move e5, the more classical Najdorf structure. This move e5, knight to b3 was the follow-up. And Kasparov again pausing. You saw Nigel make that move really fast. Of course, his knight was under attack, and it's the best square in this position. And Garry once again stopping to look at the board. So I think that slight psychological edge right away to Nigel.
Right, and it's definitely an opening that looks for the advantage. It's not kind of this whatever, I'm going to just waste my white advantage. No, he's going for it. He has some strategical good things about his position that he can use in the future. The move g3, a little committal. You're going to have to put your bishop on g2, which is not exactly where you want to put it in many of these Najdorf variations. But on the other hand, it has a lot of control over the key square d5, one of the battlegrounds of this opening. And we're going to see if Kasparov's going to be able to fix his problems on d5.
Well, he's just played knight bd7 short, then played a4, restricting the opponent, restricting black from playing b5. So Garry instead played b6 in response. Now bishop g2 and bishop to b7. So the bishops on the long diagonal there, both controlling d5 directly and indirectly. It looks as though a positional start so far. Kasparov going into more solid waters instead of those wild poison pawn variations that he's known. He could write the book just sitting there and write out a whole book on these lines.
And out of memory,
and
completely
just out
of
of
memory.
And just out of memory. Just have a lecture for hours on those kinds of positions. But now he's in a more solid position, something you might have expected someone like Karpov to play against him back in their World Championship battles. A solid position for white. We'll see whether or not Nigel can drum up any kind of initiative from the get-go. How should white proceed here if he's going to get any kind of real play against black's position?
There are many ways to try to play in this position. You can go for a very quick knight d5 and then force black to take on d5, creating a majority for white in the queen side and for black in the center/king side. And the question then becomes whose majority is more important, whose attacks is faster. That's one way of doing things. The other one is to just play it slow, play something along the lines of queen d3, taking advantage of the fact that the move knight c5 can always be met with knight takes c5, and just developing, castling, rook d1, maybe bishop b3. And then a crazier line is to simply go for lines involving g4, g5, saying, hey, I really do want that d5 square for myself. Now, these are not the most common ideas, especially since you've already started with the move g3, but I've seen them happen once in a while, more often in blitz than in rapid. But it is an idea. I don't expect short to go for that. I expect for him to either play something like queen d3 or castle immediately. Because of the structure specifically in this position, the idea f4 is not as good as it normally is, because you won't have a target, for example, with the bishop on e6 to play an f5 with tempo. But it's still up in the air. It could still be played. It does put some pressure on the center. So we're going to see exactly what short tries to do with this position. Very flexible structure.
He's been thinking quite a bit right on this move, which shows you that there are those multiple options here, and he has to decide in himself which one he should go for. Should he go for the crazy line like g4, intimidate Garry Kasparov? Those words don't seem to go together very well, because Garry is not intimidated by much, and he loves to refute rambunctious variations to prove that they're strategically incorrect. This guy is a bear. He still has that demeanor of a fighter. He just his presence at the board used to intimidate players, and he still has that charismatic fighting style, fighting pose, intensity when he's sitting there. Just look at him like, make the wrong move, please. Just make the wrong move.
And you might be wondering what's going through Kasparov's head right now, and he's comparing positions. He's thinking, what is the difference with the bishop on b7? What's the difference with the bishop on e6? With the bishop already being on g2, can I save a tempo here? Can I save a tempo there? He is so exact and so familiar with all of these structures that he knows where the pieces belong. He knows when the pawn breaks need to be done, when and where the pieces need to be traded. So he's simply making sure that with this exact position, those elements are still in alignment.
And he's a very emotional player, emotional person, period. He runs some kind of different clock than the average person. His longtime friend Mike Khodorkovsky told me that sometimes Garry will call him at 3 in the morning. I mean, Gary's just got an idea, and you got to wake up and hey, I got something to tell you right now. That's the kind of person he is. He does everything quickly. He does everything like somebody's chasing him. He is now sitting there. Castles has been played, and he also must know the best ideas in this position or some of the key ideas and was looking at them for white. But now Castles, a very solid move.
Very standard.
Certainly not a challenging move right at this moment like G4, but a standard move, as you said, in the position.
Right. A very common idea here for black is to play rook c8. Of course, he could develop the bishop right away, which seems like the most natural move.
And he has done so. Bishop to e7 has been played. And some of the momentum we talked about in the opening, short, causing Kasparov to pause just for a moment, that has kind of gone away here as you see that Nigel is a little bit behind on the clock, but now just still playing very solid moves after the bishop e7, now playing rook to e1.
Right, you might wonder what the point of rook e1 is, and actually overprotecting on e4 is rather important because I had mentioned the move rook c8, and the idea of rook c8 is that sometimes the sacrifice on c3 can become quite unpleasant. If I can get a pawn, especially a central pawn, on top of destroying your pawn structure on the queen side, this can become really, really ugly. And, well, with rook e1, this at least won't happen. The pawn on e4 is reinforced. This is not going to be an issue. A secondary idea, which is not so common for this variation specifically, but it is for others, is that when I put my rook on e1, I'm able to bring my knight from d2 to f1 to e3, which is a very good square as it targets both the f5 and d5 weaknesses.
Yes, that knight on b3 is often a problem child in this opening. You sometimes play f4 in order to get it back to d4, but as you said, may not be the right moment to play it now. But still, f4's got to be the critical kind of move to look at. Although now the rook is left from the f1 square, you might think about playing a bit more positionally. But white still has to come up with a concrete strategy. Rook to c8 has been played instead of Castles, rook to c8. And Nigel playing knight d2, as you mentioned, looking like he's headed for that f1 square, and then to the e3 square.
Yeah, it's a very natural idea. Of course, there's a couple of problems to put in the knight on d2 immediately. The first is I'm giving up c5. So the knight can come to c5 in some cases and maybe even reroute himself to e6. d4 is particularly weak when this knight goes to e3, as I'm not going to have a bishop to go to e3 and nobody's going to be covering the d4 square. Kind of a trade of weaknesses in this position. Another idea for black after knight d2 is to simply wait. Once you get the knight to e3, I can think about sacrificing the exchange, as I had mentioned previously, since the knight will be blocking the influence of the rook from e1 to the pawn on e4. So we're going to have to see exactly how it goes. On the other hand, because of this particular brand of Najdorf, it's a little slower than usual, and I can put my knight on f1 and then simply reinforce my position.
And it's interesting for black as well, because black can make a couple of moves, castles, and then play rook to e8, maybe bishop f8, try to waste some time. But he's going to have to realize that white is making maneuvers to improve his position. And
Exactly.
Black will have to find specific ways to do the same, because you can't just sit back and watch white make moves.
No, that's very dangerous. And especially if white's able to control d5 and get a knight there and eventually take with a piece, that's just the dream situation.
Well, look at this. Instead of sitting still and playing solid moves, Kasparov is lashed out with h5. Wow, take a look at that move. We saw Garry do h5 and h4 yesterday, but just leaving his king in the middle of the board and signaling again with the black pieces, I want to attack. I saw you have a reaction immediately to that move. It's not exactly the most positional solid move in the world, and it's like, why are you attacking the guy? He's completely defended on that side. The knight's going to show up on that side as well. It doesn't seem positionally justified, but we are talking about Garry Kasparov, and he's saying, I don't need a draw. I'm trying to smash you today. An amazing turn of events with this move, h5, and he just played it with his trademark confidence and aggression.
It's possible that h5 is a combination of ideas. I had mentioned the fact that you can maybe wait for the knight to come to e3 to sacrifice the rear rook on c3, since it would lose the control over e4. And it seems like h5 is doing that. It kind of waits for you to get the knight to e3, but at the same time, it does something very useful. You're going to be able to play h4, blast open the h file.
And he's done so after knight to f1. Now h4, totally indicating his intentions, along with the ideas you mentioned, the potential sacrifice. And we've seen Garry push H-pawns before. I remember a classic game he played against Shirov in a Najdorf where his pawns ended up on G5 and G4 and then on H3. and he just ripped open the diagonal towards the king. So he is known for this kind of wild play, but his H-pawn now sitting on H4. And Short might have come into the game thinking, I have the white pieces. I'm going to play even more aggressively. Okay, G3 is not the most aggressive system, but I'm going to play for some initiative. And all of a sudden, black is playing like this after 13 moves. There's a black pawn sitting on H4 sniffing around the king.
And Nigel just let it happen. I mean, he did have the option of playing H3 first so as to meet H4 with G4. But the way he played it, he said, okay, I'm not really going to care. And he did play knight e3. And he's saying, I don't care about your exchange sacrifices. They're not strong enough. Now, that's a brave thing to say to somebody like Kasparov.
That's crazy. Look at this.
I'm thinking you take on G3. I'm guessing taking on G3 first, and then you take on C3. So I'm analyzing the variation. Takes on G3, pawn takes G3, rook takes, pawn takes, and then I'm not sure what to take with, but my instinct says takes with the bishop. And I don't know, the position is crazy.
But the reality is that there are not a lot of pieces hovering around White's king. In this case, White maybe just trade on E4 and then plunk the knight down on F5. Let's take a look at that variation because it is highly a critical line on the analysis board. Knight to F5, and he's instead just played the move G6, not sacrifice. That knight was thinking about going to that F5 square, but so in that line, that's a critical line for us to look at with the rook sacrificing on C3, and that whole variation you just played out. The knight landing on F5 might have been the reason why
he
decided not to go for this sacrifice.
So G6, simply preventing the knight from coming to F5, a very positional, quiet move after launching that pawn all the way to H4.
But now he's ready to sack on C3 if
now
you give him a
he's ready
chance.
to sack on C3, and more importantly, it asks White, well, you got your knight to E3, and now what? Are you really going to plunk it down on D5? And if you're not, why did you do all this? So
let's take a look at that line. Put a knight on D5 and see what happens.
Knight D5, and let's see. Right now, unfortunately for Short, he would like to take everything on D5 with pieces. He doesn't want to commit his pawn structure and take with a pawn. But unfortunately for him, the pawn on C2 would be hanging at the end. And it seems like even if he can somehow get it back, this pawn on C2 was pretty important. The rook looks really active.
There are no white pieces supporting any kind of aggressive stance in this position. If somehow he could steal the C file in some way.
Right, but he's a little below on development. If
that bishop were already on E3 and he could play maybe rook C1 and B4, some ideas like that, that would be useful. But at the moment, it doesn't seem like that line works. And what's also intriguing about this advance by Kasparov is he can still castle kingside, right? He can trade on G3 and castle at some point in the game. It's not like it's impossible for him to do if at a moment where things get crazy.
It's not that committal. There's some variations in which you just launch that H-pawn and that's it. You're never going to castle. Your king's in the center forever. But in this one particularly, because the way the white pieces are posted, it doesn't seem like you can take advantage of me, for example, taking on G3, castling short, saying I'm going to go back and play positionally. And even sometimes you take on G3 and simply go King F8, King G7. The king's perfectly fine on G7. You retain that strong rook on the H file, and you make your opponent uncomfortable. Suddenly, the idea of doubling up on the H file doesn't seem impossible.
You look at this position, and it looks as though White has nothing. I mean, nothing impressive anyway.
There's nothing impressive for sure. It's definitely a little dangerous, I would say, even for White. I don't really like that he allowed Black so many useful moves if you cannot get your knight to D5, because the whole point with this maneuver is to get that knight there. If you're not going to do it in this move, when are you going to do it? What other preparatory move do you have?
Doesn't seem like there's any. I mean, what to do next? The knight is in the way of the bishop on C1. The bishop on G2 is doing what it's supposed to do. How do you get your rook into the game? The only plan seems to be knight D5, but it doesn't seem that effective. Let's take a look at it again, though. This move knight to D5, what happens if he trades and takes back with a pawn at the end?
There's a lot of nuances in this position, of course. You want to ask yourself which knight, and when you decide which knight, what is my opponent going to recapture with? You can always go knight C D5 or knight E D5. It seems like knight C D5 makes a little bit more sense. And then I can capture now with the bishop, or I could capture with the knight. If I capture with the bishop, I can take with the pawn, maybe try to exploit some weakness on c6, maybe get the pair of bishops, or I could take with the knight. And now taking with the pawn doesn't seem as effective because f5 becomes a lot easier to play, and c6 is not nearly as weak. But I can now take with the knight. And then after bishop takes, well, what do I take with? Taking with the pawn looks okay, and then, yeah, c6 is weak, but you're never going to really be able to exploit it. On the other hand, if you take with the queen, we had already seen this variation. You play rook takes c2. It seems like a pawn for now. I don't see any exact way of recovering it because, for example, after queen d3, with the double attack on a6 and queen on c2, you have the double defense, queen c8, defending both the pawn and the rook. It's possible that white has a little bit of compensation here. He does have the pair of bishops. Maybe he has some threat somewhere, but I don't think it really can be sufficient.
The lines don't seem open enough for white here, especially to give away a pawn. In that kind of position, it seems white would want to win a pawn. And he's played the ultra-sophisticated rook to e2, and Garry's eyes seem to open wide on that one. Did you see that expression on his face when this move appeared on the board? Like, what's this about? Rook to e2.
Well, I'm quite confused. I mean, there's a couple of problems with the move. The idea is quite obvious, actually. It defends the pawn on c2 in the variation that we just saw. So the pawn on c2 will be defended. I'm going to be able to take on d5 with the queen. However, if I do end up playing for these ideas of taking on c3, and let me just throw in the move pawn takes g3 on the analysis board. I'm going to force you to take with the pawn on h-file, because if you take with the pawn on f, this is just ugly, like completely ugly pawn structure. So I'm going to have to take this. And if I sacrifice now, and I take with the knight, normally in the other variation, you could play knight d5.
And he has begun, by the way, by trading on g3. And that sacrifice you're talking about is sitting in the position Kasparov could whip it out right now.
And the point is that if you don't have knight d5, because of this unfortunate position of the rook on e2, after knight takes c3, this is a double attack that simply wins 2 pawns. I want my pawn on e4, the pawn on c3, and I'm going to regain my exchange. Therefore, you now have to do something. You cannot possibly play like this. This looks suicidal to me. Here, black has every good thing in the position. He's down the exchange, but look at that coordination between...
What exchange?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
The rook on a1 would argue that it's not in the game for now and forever, and this threat
even the bishop
is
on
too much.
Bishop f3 would be a threat. So after knight takes e4, I'm threatening, this idea of on c3, and now you have to play something awkward, maybe like bishop b2. I don't think I'm missing anything immediate, right? You have to play something like bishop b2, but okay, this bishop is quite bad. I can follow up with either f5 or, bishop b2. I can follow up with f5 or maybe knight f6.
Bishop b2 looks ridiculous. I mean, that
It's
bishop
really
is just
ugly.
terrible in that square. Although he might want to play for this line if he could get in c4 and knight d5. Maybe it's only temporary.
But the problem with doing anything like this is that let me put my knight on f6. I just solidify my pieces in the center. I don't allow you to play knight d5, which is quite important. And then after c4, I can even go something like queen c8. I hit your pawn on c4. Your pawn structure is really ugly. I'm always going to have ideas of queen h3. The queen coming down to h3. If for some reason this bishop disappears.
You've got to play knight d5 now and pray for rain. I mean, otherwise, what else are you going to do?
No, I agree completely with you, but this is not a powerful exchange.
No, this does not look great yet, unless that rook can jump into a3 and somehow find some files to work with. This position definitely is a challenging one, and there's no question about it. Right now, Kasparov is studying exactly the ramifications of the sacrifice on c3. He's wondering, do I have to do it right now, or is there something else I can do? And look at Nigel take a sip of soda there, like, oh, what? Nothing's going on. Make pretend. Right. He knows for sure that this electrifying sacrifice is possible, actually a standard sacrifice in this
but if I
formation.
know Kasparov, he's not thinking, do I have to play this? He says, can I play this? Please let me play this. He's salivating at the idea of just playing the most typical Sicilian sacrifice there has ever been, capturing on c3, destroying the pawn structure in the center. He knows it's not as easy as it sounds, that short must have some kind of resource somewhere, because it's short. I mean, he's seen the sacrifice once or twice, probably played it hundreds of times himself. So what he's wondering is, what exactly is my opponent planning to do if I do sacrifice my exchange?
But there's so many pluses in black's position. It's ultra solid. it's only an exchange. It's not even a full exchange because you get a pawn immediately. The guy will never get the pawn back.
And the pawn structure already shattered.
This is a standard position where you take on c3. He's only calculating lines right now, and he's got a nice little advantage on the clock, so he can look at it, make sure, and also look to see what else could he do. I mean, if you look at this position, c3 is almost screaming to be played. Everything else is quiet, and knight d5 is coming. Like, knight d5 is actually White's plan and will appear on the board, and you will never be able to sacrifice on c3. So
it's a now or never.
So it's now or never.
Yeah.
This is maybe the most critical moment in the entire game. And he has indeed sacrificed on c3. Going for it is Kasparov, and taking on e4, going for the main line. He knew he had to just make sure he was not blundering, and Short did play bishop to b2, recognizing that that is the position that he had to acquiesce to. But the sacrifice by Kasparov, bravely going forth, well, we know that it was the right thing to do from a positional standpoint, but will it now be enough? Will he be able to prove that he has sufficient play here for his sacrifice to work? Now, let's take a look at some lines. Could Black maybe go with Queen A8 as an idea, maybe, and
Queen
get some?
A8 is definitely an idea. I mean, this pressure on the diagonal is unbelievably unpleasant. You're going to have ideas of knight g5 coming up. The trade of bishops will always be nearly lethal for White, because the opening of the grand diagonal will simply lead to too much coordination between Black's heavy pieces. At the moment, this would be a very serious threat. I immediately have to think, how do I patch things up in this position?
Yeah, what do you do? Like,
I think you have to go c4.
c4 might just be timing necessary to put the...
Luckily for Short, this knight on e3 is still defending the bishop on g2, so I don't have any ideas involving, for example, knight c3, because after bishop takes c3, bishop takes, you still have that knight defending on g2. So I still cannot quite play this.
Can the knight come into f6 and start the other knight, the one on d7?
Right, absolutely. I mean, this looks like a very logical way of continuing. You take control over that d5 square. I mean, we can even do it the other way around. If we play knight df6, in which we were looking at earlier, I really don't see any other move but c4. And then again, this move queen a8 looks pretty logical, taking control over the d5 square.
The only line to look at here, though, is knight to d5 for White, and
I was
desperation.
looking at that, but I don't think it works. I mean, if I simply take...
Does he have to take right now?
I don't see anything else. The problem with bishop e4 is that I have this intermediate move knight c3. Now, after bishop takes b7, knight e2 is check, an unfortunate positioning for the rook on e2. Queen takes e2, and then after queen takes b7, White resigns. I mean, you're down a pawn, you're down...
Oh, actually, you could have probably just taken on b7 in the line instead of taking with check.
That's also possible.
That's probably stronger.
Even stronger, because there's checkmate
on h1 and the d1 queen. Yeah, that looks...
deadly.
Oh, man, so he can't play...
Because if he takes on c3, then takes on e4 again.
That's suicide.
That's suicide.
That bishop is way too strong.
Way too strong, especially coordinated.
And he has brought the knight to f6, bringing another piece into play. And what can Short possibly do about this? c4 looks like the only way to slow down the massive Black army that's and he has also followed. So we're guessing right here with these moves.
Queen A8
is the money move.
That's what we're looking at.
And his hand is hovering over the queen, just hesitating before he plays this move. He knows that he wants to add the pressure to the position. His queen will be on this magnificent diagonal, and all its pieces will be connected like a string. It's just tremendous, this sacrifice. But he's hesitating now. He's just checking. There's no question he sees the move queen to 8. He's just trying to make sure that knight d5, the critical line, does not work. Because otherwise, Short looks like he's busted.
It looks a little too easy. I think that's why he's hesitating. And he
played
played queen
c8 instead.
That was my original idea that I suggested, but the more I looked at it, the more I liked queen a8 because it prevented this idea completely. Now, maybe he's seen another refutation to knight d5. Maybe he thinks at this point Short cannot play knight d5.
Let's take a look.
And let me see what he has in store at the moment. He could, for example, take on c4 immediately. That seems like a very possible idea.
They're taking on c4, and if you play knight takes on f6, then there's always bishop takes f6.
Right, I don't see an issue here.
But the pieces...
It's not as nice as the other line. Definitely not. I'm a little more worried about things happening, but I cannot see anything for White.
What about, I was going to say queen d3? Is that maybe annoying here?
Queen d3 with the idea of attacking on e4, and you're also attacking my queen. And if you force me to trade queens, maybe this is not so ideal. I mean, probably Black's still okay, but...
Knight d5 has been played. They're going down the critical variation.
And he's just challenging Kasparov to prove why he played Queen c8, definitely Queen a8 looked.
Queen 8 looked great. I mean, we're criticizing one of the best ever right now. And, you know, it's much easier to do commentary from the side than it is to actually play the moves on the board. But this line is critical. Let's take a look at this line. Queen takes c4 looks automatic. Knight takes, bishop takes, and this move.
Yeah, you have to take with the
You
bishop.
can't take with the knight because of the pin on the long diagonal. So queen to d3, and it seems as though he has to trade here, yes? Queen takes. What other move do you have? There doesn't seem to be any miraculous tactics.
I don't see any tricks here.
So, for example, if you show the line d5 doesn't work because you just lose a piece to queen takes on c4.
Or bishop e4 immediately also wins a piece.
Right. So let's show one of those lines. Bishop takes, and whatever you do here.
Right. You cannot take because queen takes on c4. And if you play queen takes, then it just bishop takes.
Bishop takes, and that's nothing.
Winning, completely winning.
So that means after queen d3, it looks like he has to play queen takes queen.
Yeah,
and he has instead not gone for taking on c4 at all. He did not want to go into this line. He took on d5.
Now, actually, bishop takes e4 doesn't seem too appealing because now I can take on c4 with the queen. But still, not as bad as the other variations we were looking at with queen a8.
He's instead played c takes on d4,
yeah,
on d5, excuse me.
I mean, this doesn't look so bad.
This doesn't feel like the other line, the queen a8 line, unless there was something we missed. Queen a8 looked crushing. This variation, white seems to have calmed things down dramatically, although now Kasparov has played the move knight to g5. Knight to g5 has been played. I am not sure what the main threats are here. In fact, f4 looks like something white will think about in the future. f4 now, you have to deal with knight h3 check. But this is a very different position. The dominant advantage he had.
I feel something went wrong. I feel rook takes c3 had to be the move. And again, we're not looking at this with engines, but queen a8 to me looked logical, strong.
It did. So let's not belabor the point too much. Maybe there was some kind of refutation that we're not seeing at the moment. The reality is on the board right now, it looks as though, well, the situation is this. Kasparov has sacrificed in exchange for a bishop and pawn. No, for now, in this case, a knight and pawn. So it's a knight. He has a knight and a pawn for the exchange. He is not yet castled. He is sort of hovering around the king side, but it's not the same kind of attack he had before. The bishop on b7 is not really an electrifying figure like it was before. Now that that pawn has taken up the d5 square,
that pawn was so bad on c3. It was absolutely horrible.
It's incredible what has happened, actually.
Now that pawn on d5 is holding white together. Without this pawn on d5, yes, there's a lot of attack. But now this pawn on d5 protects the bishop on g2 from being traded. It's, of course, still a little dangerous for white, I feel. I feel it's still easier to play for black, but nowhere to the level that I would have expected.
There is some danger as well. May I add, maybe a queen could go to f5 and start some funky ideas there?
There's definitely ideas of queen f5, knight f3 check. There's still some problems with all of the light squares. The bishop can reroute to c8 and maybe try to trade itself on h3. And of course, there's always the question, what is white going to do? The problem with ever playing the move f4 at any point is that you have to deal with the fact that your king will become unsafe as well. Queen c5 check will force you to play something along the lines of king f1. And even though, well, in this specific variation, the knight on g5 is hanging, if you're allowing me to play a5, bishop a6, that might in the future become a very difficult thing to deal with. So yeah, f4, I mean, it's something you want to play at some point, but it's also going to come with its risks.
Absolutely, but maybe he has to take a chance now, because what else can he do to deal with the threat? Well, let's just take a look at if queen f5 is that strong. So I'm going to make a move, and let's see if we can refute it. What about rook to a3, for example, trying to bring this piece into the game? It's completely out the way, and now it's protecting the third rank. What about this move? Is this a strong idea? I mean, rook c3 could eventually, get to c7 potentially.
It's definitely an idea. It's the kind of moves the short at least wants to play, to be able to say, I'm a rook compared to your position. Like, how can you deal with the files? If I can control the files, maybe I can control something in the game. The problem is the files are pretty closed, so since there's a pawn on c2, you want to move rook lift and use the rook on the third rank. Now, in this case, I don't know. I mean, I could play queen f5. I can look at moves like e4 in the future.
Wait a second. He's actually played c4. c4 has been played. That's a pawn sacrifice. The pawn has gone to c4, cementing the pawn on d5, shutting the bishop on b7 out of the game, at least for the moment. That bishop could reroute itself, but the move c4 now, saying to Garry, you're never going to attack along this diagonal. I don't even want to know about the ghost of the attack along that diagonal. But the question still bears consideration. Queen to f5. What does he have up his sleeve against this particular move?
Yeah, just really quickly, I don't think that Kasparov can actually take on c4. It looks suicidal to begin with.
Well,
but
bringing the rook
to
into the
c1
game
just
seems unnecessary.
Completely
if
difficult.
not lost, but at least unnecessary.
Yeah, it just looks very bad. So I don't think this is going to happen. But queen f5, you're asking, looks pretty logical to me. You still have ideas of knight f3, bishop c8 in the future. But okay, at least you've been able to reinforce that pawn on d5, and that gives you a little leeway for sure.
There was another line, if we could go back really quickly before he moves, there was another line that's completely ridiculous. Bishop takes on e5. Is that?
No, it didn't.
Is that just,
it didn't quite work. The problem was that after pawn takes and d6.
No, I was going to just play rook takes. I was going to wait because the d6 threat was coming with threat of d7 as well.
I just don't think that you can do this because I play king f8. And I know this is pretty crazy, but I thought that you were losing after d6, bishop g2. I thought that I just allow you to take and I go king g7.
And now the queen, something appears on h3. Even a knight, even if I under promote, no, that's not going to do it. Queening and there's mating ideas. Yeah, that's a bit too much. All right, definitely worth looking at, but it's too sharp an idea. So let's get back to the game. The move, the position on the board with the knight on g5, and now Short has played c4, which looks like it has nothing to do with the king side, but he's decided he could shore up that king side with his own pieces, maybe a rook on a3 at some point. And the clock times, both players playing pretty quickly, at least staying even on the clock.
Yeah, they're
We do have
staying
a rich
even in a
position.
very sharp position. There was a lot to calculate. There were a lot of resources to take into consideration. And even now, piece placement is not so obvious. Even the last move, c4, you know, we didn't even consider. We were looking at so many other variations that can still be played. And it's easy for us to just make moves on the board and say, well, this, and that. But wow, calculating it over the board with the clock ticking,
Come on, we know about that. Everybody on the side with their engines, they know the truth, right? You get people saying, oh, how they're playing so badly. You try to do this.
Exactly.
Have the
That's
whole
not
world
easy.
looking at you, the clock ticking down, complex variations to analyze, and the human brain trying to work out the multiplicity of possibilities. That is not easy. And we see here these great champions trying to work it all out. The move c4 played by Short. He's got to be feeling a little bit better, though, I think.
I think
it looked like he was going to die.
I think he's super happy.
You got the feeling he was on a tightrope.
Well, it's a good feeling from a lot of psychological points of view. Because like yesterday's game, when Kasparov was having this wonderful attack in the first rapid, he had all this initiative and he felt it. He felt there was a win. And I have the feeling that Kasparov has this in the back of his mind at the moment, that the sacrifice looked so strong. There had to be something. And it's something that is in the back of my mind. I didn't even play the sacrifice. So I'm sure that he's looking at this position and saying, something went wrong.
Yes.
This is not exactly as clean as it should be. White has too many resources. Where's my attack?
Yeah, you're looking at the position and realize you have to play chess. When a second ago you thought you were just going to run a snowball down the hill and hit the guy at the bottom. Right now, he just has to play chess.
It just looks like an even game. There's possibilities for both sides. Plenty of ways for both sides to make mistakes. White's king still under a little bit of pressure. On the other hand, that structure on the queen side is kind of worrying me a little bit. Another point of c4 is simply to go queen b3 and then start taking everything on the queen side. Eventually.
We got to make sure nothing's happening. You're not getting blasted on the other side of the board. No knight h3 checks, funny business happening. But because that bishop on b7 is not in the game, because that bishop on e7 is not in the game, and you're only functioning with these three pieces, and White's bishop is on that side, the rook is helping as well, enough pawns, there are no easy breakthroughs, it means that White's okay. And that's, unless that bishop on b7 somehow reroutes itself and ends up on g4, then you start talking about maybe a little action. But that's going to take a few moves, and Black's queen has to move, the bishop has to move.
I don't think he has anything immediate. I think at the moment he has to do exactly what you're saying. Reroute his pieces, make them useful, make them threaten things. He doesn't have the firepower to just blast open that king on g1 right now. He has to be a little bit more patient. If he goes for a crazy style of attack, just throw pawns forward or not develop all of his pieces, then Short will be able to greedily take the entire queenside without really anything happening to him.
Not to mention the fact that that bishop e5 idea might start working, creeping into some variations with the black king still in the center of the board. It's not like white is just sitting here now waiting for slaughter. I mean, he's got plenty of ideas to play for.
We have a close position right now, and in close positions, knights are pretty good, and usually bishops and rooks don't play so well. But the important thing is that close positions can always turn into open positions. All you need to do is sacrifice a piece, trade a couple of pawns, and suddenly this rooks and bishops become monstrous. The king on e8, for now, it looks safe. But it's not going to be safe in the long run. This bishop e5 idea is already up in the air. There's always ideas of f4, which we had already mentioned. So it's not like Kasparov is sitting pretty here and saying, oh, I'm just safe, I'm going to move my pieces around. No, Short has some really good ideas as well. Kasparov spent a lot of time here.
The psychological momentum has certainly shifted in white's favor. That sacrifice on c3, when we see them in the books, classically, the sacrifice on c3 usually ends in disaster for the white pieces. Black just puts all his pieces on great squares, and suddenly there's a mating attack, or he's just gobbling on multiple pawns. That did not happen here, and Kasparov feels that shift in the position. So does Short, no question about it. Both of them realizing that black is not going to win anytime soon, and in the meantime, Kasparov is struggling. You know how it is when you have a great position, to shift back out of, I had a great position, maybe close to winning position, and now it's suddenly even-ish, and the guy has play. What did I do? I'm still thinking about that a little bit in the back of my mind. What do I do now? I need to focus. And Short feels that pressure on Kasparov. And look at that. Kasparov is starting to shake his head as the variations are not forthcoming, how to exactly play concretely. And we remember yesterday in the interview, he mentioned the idea that when the position was concrete, when it was something he could calculate, it was over. Like, I'm going to hit you here, hit you here, hit you here. But that's not what this is right now. Now it's a question of having that chess sense in your fingertips, that positional flow that comes from having played a lot and not being rusty, just being able to just put the pieces on the right squares. You just pick them up and put them down on the square. Garry's not in that kind of form, and he's showing it right now, spending a lot of time right now in this position.
It's a lot of time, and the more I see the position, the less I think it's even-ish, and the more I'm saying, wait, why can't I just do that? Why can't I do that? Why can't white simply play pretty good moves? Queen b3, bishop a3, bishop c1, e3, f4.
And a5, a pawn on the periphery has been moved. That looked like it has absolutely nothing to do with the chess position. a5 looks like a waste move. I've got to move because I've only got 5 minutes and change on the clock. I know the bishop is trying to get to that a6 square, so it's ostensibly a good idea, but I feel like if I were Nigel, I'd be thinking blast away.
I'd be very happy with this move after a5. It just shows that you thought forever, you didn't come up with anything too aggressive, and he just plays quick chess. I like this by Nigel, even though maybe theoretically and your engine says rook c1 is not the best move on the board. Who cares? You played it fast, it makes sense, you defend the pawn on c4, you bring a rook into the game, and you make Kasparov think and prove why was a5 a decent idea.
On top of which, like we said, we're trying to figure out how to maneuver the pieces to great squares. Bishop a6, you can have it. That's a square I want you to play. I'll make a waste move if you promise you're going to put your bishop on a6, because that's not going to hurt the king sitting on g1. The only way that could happen is if somehow the c-pawn were to disappear, but no way you're touching that c-pawn.
No way. I mean, the rook's going to be on c1. The only way you can actually take it is with the combined efforts of the bishop and the queen. But as soon as you take it with the bishop, there's going to be this problems down the c-file with the immediate pin. You would have to have some miraculous trick to get out of it.
Well, maybe let's think about that for a second. There is a possibility that Kasparov is looking to put his knight on h3, and the only move is king f1, so the bishop would take on c4. Maybe that's the deeper idea. I can't imagine that idea works.
No, it works if I give you 3 free moves, but I mean, I don't think that Nigel is going to allow that. No, of course, there are some ideas, and of course there are some tactical resources, but at the moment they're a little bit kind of helpmates. Yes. In the sense that, okay, white has to actually walk into it. Yeah, bishop a6, maybe I can technically take on c4 right now, but the problem is, like, most decent moves here by white just flat out prevent bishop takes c4.
Right, queen b3 is possible here, for example.
Queen d3.
Queen d3, another idea, so plenty of ways to stop this initiative, the attack. Not going Kasparov's way, but it seems he has played the move. Bishop to a6 is on the board.
Yeah.
And this one tricky idea, putting the knight on h3, trying to challenge short now to deal with the possibility of the explosion on c4. So he found his only real idea in the position. It looks suspicious to us right now that it really works.
It puts some pressure on c4. In the long run, it's an okay move. It's just that short doesn't feel the pressure at the moment. We were trying to kill white, but I guess Kasparov really figured out, hey, I can't do that. Let me just put my pieces on some decent squares. And the list attacks that pawn on c4, which is difficult to defend in the long run, and maybe forces a piece to do so. That has to be his idea. He's not really trying to gain that initiative back, which maybe is a good idea. If you actually try for the initiative and the initiative only, you might have run out of pieces. There wasn't enough gunpowder in that barrel.
Well, let's try queen b3 at the moment. It looks like a natural move. Why is this move refuted in some kind of way?
It's not. I mean, it looks like the most obvious move to me.
Let's try queen g4 as a response, just for black. Is this something he has to worry about?
The problem is that, well, you don't threaten knight f3, right? In most variations, you're just not threatening knight f3. So if I can move my rook, I guess I should be some sort of okay, like rook e3.
Rook e3, but then maybe your rooks are connected badly. A knight to h3 check, and then bishop g5. I'm just looking for stringing for some tricks here. Anything.
Right. I think you lose at some point here after I just go f4, but it might be a little more complicated than white wants it to be.
Can you sack on f4, the knight maybe, and really get nuts? I can't imagine this working, but...
Me neither, but it's probably as good as it gets for black coming from a practical point of view.
And short having to look at those lines. That's the other thing, too. You have to look at complicated variations like this one because you don't want Garry to come up with some tactical trick that you fell asleep on and suddenly one of the greatest attacking players in history has got you on the business end of a wicked variation. So he has to be really careful, but the clock is ticking down. Only 4:51. I don't think these necessarily are the exact clock times. Maybe they match up with the clocks on the board. Let's see if we see the actual time. And there it is, actually, 4:51. It is matched up. 7:18 for white and ticking down quickly. So we'll see. And actually, it's not perfectly matched because he had only 7:18, but with the 10-second and all that. So it's a little bit of a lag there. So we'll pay attention to that. If we get to the time pressure, we're sure our able director will make sure that everything is perfect for us to take a look at and be timed out just right. We've been told that he's on break right now. At any rate, let's see what happens next. Short taking a lot of time after this idea that we thought was fairly innocuous. Bishop a6 looks a little ridiculous move, but it's turning into a little bit more of an irritant than Short anticipated, or even that we anticipated. And Short shuffling in his chair there, not comfortable completely with what the next move should be.
Right, he's not as comfortable as I expected him to be in this position. I'm trying to calculate some lines, and I'm even trying to just kill black with some bishop e5 sacrifices. I don't see them quite working at the moment. I'm trying to use the fact that your bishop went to a6, so now I can play d6 lines. But the more I see it, the less I can make it quite work. There's always some details here and there that don't quite function. So maybe Short's also trying to make some of these sacrifices work.
Well, let's take a look at that sacrifice, because I liked the sacrifice earlier, but I was able to refute it with knight h3 if I tried to take on e5 right away. So
I think I can take, and I just don't see enough threats. If, for example, d6, I can play bishop f6, and that holds the e5 square.
Right.
d7 doesn't seem like a threat.
The critical line is rook takes on e5, of course.
Right, this is the critical line.
Now, king f8, we should point out, king f8 is an idea, and d6 now is very different from before because of the d7 followed by rook to e8 idea potentially coming up. But maybe even this is okay for black.
Right, I don't see too much of a trouble right now. If I play bishop f6, d7, I move my queen to c7. I'm still holding the d8 square with my bishop.
Exactly.
And if you go check, I go king g7, and I still think I'm okay.
Looks like that's all she wrote because d8 is
under
covered so easily.
96 is coming on the next move. There's still some pressure, but I don't think it was quite worth sacrificing a bishop for this.
Well, let me tell you, that idea by Kasparov, a5, bishop to a6, we thought queen b3 or maybe rook e3 or something quick would come. But Nigel has been thinking now for almost it looks like 5 minutes on this move. So stroke of genius to Kasparov because he has created just a little bit of niggling pressure to say, think about this. I am rerouting the bishop. We were trying to get the bishop all the way around to the g4 square. He has put it on the a6 square with little interesting tactics, and he is now ahead on the clock. Can you imagine this would have happened? Nigel, somebody wake this guy up, because he has been thinking for so long a very impractical decision. We have now transformed from a rapid game to a blitz game. We are down to under 5 minutes, and Short finally has played queen b3. No way in the world, after all that thought, to play this move, unless there's a concrete refutation by Kasparov, and his queen has jumped to the g4 square, and rook from c to c2.
Right, just defending the rook. It looks pretty solid. The queen on b3 still keeps the pressure on this pawn on b6. It also defends this position on f3 immediately, so there are no knight f3 ideas right now. It challenges black to keep finding moves. Because my rooks are not on the awkward square that they were in the line that I gave in e3 and c3, there's no knight h3 checking f1 bishop g5. The bishop would just be hitting air. The knight on h3 here looks a little awkward to me.
Incredible harmony now with the rooks. All of white's pieces connected. If black does not find a breakthrough, he could be facing potential sacrifices on e5. His b6 pawn at the moment is hanging. But is this a bad position for black? I mean, black clearly does not have the attack he had before, so maybe he just has to hunker down and play bishop d8 and let come what may. I don't know what the right move is here, but Kasparov's going to have to make a move soon, because he is now under 4 minutes on the clock. Nigel with 4 minutes and 15 seconds. We're going to see blitz mode, and very uncomfortable right now is Kasparov. His body language is telling everything. He has to reset his mindset to playing a blitz game, because he was only 344, and Nigel there just taking a sip before the madness starts. Kasparov hovering over the board, looking for some kind of continuation. I would almost guarantee once he plays a move, it's going to be blitz.
It's going to be
They're both
blitz.
just going to go crazy. So,
well, we're going to see how well they adapt into time pressure. And we have to remember, blitz is a totally different game than time pressure. Yes, it's the same amount of time, but the way you've been thinking about the position for the last, 40, 50 minutes, it's completely different. Then you have to suddenly play blitz? No, it's not the same. And we see a lot of players fail in time pressure, even though they're good blitz players, because it's a different ballgame.
Kasparov now under 3 minutes. It's 2:54. We saw him oblivious to the clock yesterday, looking at the clock, and finally he brought his bishop back. He brought his bishop back, realizing he needed to make a move. This seems to potentially hang the b6 pawn, but that's a dangerous pawn to take at the moment, at least, because knight f3 check might be playable.
You need nerves of steel to play something like queen takes b6, but then again, to beat Kasparov, well, you need them. You could take on b6. I don't see any immediate refutation. After knight f3 check, I have to play king f1.
Well, let's take a look at this analysis, because this crazy knight, if this doesn't work, then Kasparov's just in trouble. Queen takes on b6. Queen takes b6, knight f3 check, king f1.
Now you could keep checking me, but I don't really think that you're going to make too much progress after knight f3 check again. Even here I can go king d1. And it just seems like...
Is bishop f5 ever going to be in the mix?
He has to play bishop f5 at some point. He might as well do it from the beginning, with the idea of maybe bishop e4 also to trade off that bishop. This bishop on g2 is holding the position together. That bishop disappears and white position collapses.
Also, bishop d3 could come in the mix at some point as well.
I'm also attacking that rook on c2, so it's definitely still very dangerous here.
A critical decision for Short, what to do, and he's played f4. Finally, this aggressive move,
fire
f4
with fire
on the board.
Amazing.
F4, and Kasparov really has no time to think about it. This is not something you can calculate. You've got to make a move. F4. We do have a 10-second delay in this game, so if you don't see the time start immediately, it's because of that 10-second delay. But f4, attacking the knight, is on the board. Knight f3 is not in play right now. Short being very aggressive, 231, left for Kasparov and ticking down very quickly. He needs to make a decision, but white's pieces look completely harmonized. I mean, it doesn't look like black could possibly have anything here.
But I'm a little confused, because do you have any other move than knight h3?
And he's played knight h3
He needed to play that immediately, because it was his only move.
That's incredible. Well, he could play knight h7, which looks disgusting.
Disgusting. You don't play that.
But now what does he do? He can't take on f4 because the rook on h8 is hanging. That bishop on the b2 square is hitting the rook, so he can't do that. So what can he do here as black? I mean,
well, he could try bishop f5, maybe bringing the bishop into the game. He can think about sacrifices on f4, but I don't see them working at the moment.
let's take a look at this.
Bishop f5 looks to me like that.
And he's played solidly. He's plays F6.
Oh, interesting.
F6, keeping lines closed,
Just
keeping lines
defending
closed
the
for the
pawn.
moment.
It's not so good for a white to go like this, as rook would eventually come to f8, say thank you for the free open file, and yeah, this looks very, very dangerous. I don't think we're going to see an f takes e5 unless it really wins something for white. On the other hand, maybe I can play a little bit slower, play something like queen f3.
Queen f3 looks very attractive right now. Just
Right.
defending everything.
You want to trade off those pieces.
This looks like a great move for white, but he has not played it as yet. His time is ticking again. He's calculating, worried maybe about some line, but it just looks like queen f3 is a very natural response
It's
here.
natural, and on the other hand, I mean, can he take on b6 and say,
Well,
so
if
what?
he takes on b6, he has to deal also with queen takes on g3, and what happens there? I mean, unless he has something concrete, he does look like he may be able to play queen c6 check. Let's try that line. Queen c6. Well, is there any mate I have to worry about on this side?
I don't quite see any immediate threats. I was trying to.
And he has played queen f3. He said, no,
Yeah,
forget
queen
it.
f3 makes
forget
a lot
it.
more sense.
Slow it
Right.
down.
Queen f3.
And queen f3, but not with much of an advantage on the clock. Now looking for an ending that potentially could be advantageous, but at the same time, this doesn't look terrible for black. The bottom line, though, is that they're going to be blitzing, and they're going to have to play very quickly.
Well, the endgames do seem pretty bad. It's not so much that you're down the exchange. I'm a little worried about the knight on h3. I don't see how you can get it back into the game. If Kasparov finds a good way to do so, he might go for the endgame. But if he doesn't, the knight on h3 might just be stuck for the rest of the game, and then, okay, you cannot really play like this.
So he has avoided it with the move queen to f5, queen to f5 on the board, and now potentially taking on f4 with a pawn has become a threat in the position. It's hard to believe he could just open the file that way, but it does seem as though it is possible to take on f4 with a pawn.
Right, and it is very important that after pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, this is a completely different endgame because the knight can now go back to g5, rejoin the rest of the pieces, and therefore here black's not doing so badly.
Complex play by both these players. They only have a minute and 40 seconds to go on the clock. This could still, if you just add another 30 minutes, they could still be playing, but they do not have the luxury of the time on their side, and somehow Short is going to have to make a move. He is down to 122 and counting on the clock, and he has played the move rook to e4, rook to e4.
He defends that pawn on f4. You were just mentioning how that might be a possibility. It prevents it in two ways. First, because the pawn is actually defended, but also, probably more importantly, it allows him to double up on the e file in certain variations where this opens up. So rook e4, a little relatively multi-purpose move.
Indeed, and also getting the rook away from any bishop that might land on g4 in the future. Right. So
I am worried a little bit about some bishop skewers on the f5 position, but at the moment, okay, there's a queen there. I can't quite do it.
Well, king f7 has been played.
King f7, just safeguarding his king, making a move, passing, saying, okay, you played rook e4, you solidified your position, but I can do the same.
Show me the money right now, and down to 126. These guys haven't really caught the memo yet. Listen to this, man. Look at this. 120 and counting.
The move bishop c1.
The thing is, it's not just needing to play. It's needing to get into blitz mode. And now he's under a minute.
Exactly.
57 seconds. This is outrageous. And he's just looked at the clock and realized his situation is perilous. He needs to make a move. 49 seconds left and counting. And he's still calculating variations. Not sure what to do.
Okay, play. Come on.
Make a move. He's looked at the clock yet again, and his hand on the chin is not the pose you want right now. And he's played the other rook over to e2, and Kasparov knows he has a significant edge on the clock. Queen
That's
to
what you need to be doing. You need to play quickly. Absolutely.
Queen to g4 has been played. That does allow the endgame after takes.
The difference is that here the e2 rook would be hanging at some point.
Well, not if he takes. If he takes, he attacks the queen. Takes on e5. Rook is attacking queen. That forces a trade, right? Although the knight g4, g5
right,
might
but
happen.
This is the endgame that I wanted.
And here it is. This has happened. Takes,
right.
Takes, and this idea of knight. No, he's not going to let.
I don't think you can allow e6 check. That
E6
would just
check
be
would
terrible.
be very strong.
So you need to take first. I think he's thinking about which one, because taking with the other pawn is actually not such a bad idea, giving some breathing room to the bishop.
And he has given white a pass pawn, but his bishop is in the game. And now rook to h4. looking to trade off rooks. A big moment, but that has allowed a knight to ensconce itself on F4. The knight coming back in this position looks
crazy. It's still very hard to evaluate.
This is a crazy position, and Nigel with only 27 seconds and counting down. He's not going to get any increment here. No added time, just a delay.
But from a practical point of view, this is so much easier to play for black. So much easier. You have this pass pawns in the center. You have some weaknesses to attack. You have A4's weak, C4's weak, and the powerful knight on F4. The knight is always such a nice asset in blitz.
And now look at this, bishop to c5, and Kasparov knows he has a super solid position. The d-pawn is not going anywhere anytime soon, and most importantly, that bishop on b2 has no potential. I mean, just none. Best it can do, it looks like it's traded itself off with the knight on f4, and that's irrelevant right now because he's got 11 seconds left. He's just got to make a move, and he's played d6.
Basically sacrificing this pawn.
Look at how Kasparov just kind of adjusted the pawn on d6, like he's had the time to do that on his own time, as a matter of fact. And now bishop h3 check, the king has to move.
The king has to go to e1.
And now bishop to b4, winning back the exchange. That's not good news for white, absolutely. Now moving his king, and Kasparov even hesitating to take this rook.
But why not? D2. Why not take it? He's going to do it. I don't see why not. It's the exchange being recovered. The pawn on d6 still weak. Not a walk in the park to win yet.
And he has ignored taking and played bishop back to d7, ripping off that pawn on a4. Now he's got a pass pawn on the a file. That was a very surprising decision, but he feels like, oh, and he's taking a pawn on d6 as well.
Now he's up material.
Now he's just up. Now he's winning on the board, winning on the clock. He's a minute advantage almost on the clock, and now he can stop and play f5, coming on strong, and now the move e4, attacking is Garry Kasparov in his element.
No, there's just too much play here. The material is not enough for short. Pawns are coming. This is really easy for
And now a knight on d3, just posting
rook on
deep
h2
in the
under
position.
attack.
Look at that bishop on h1. Ridiculous piece.
That's not the bishop you want.
This is all Garry. This looked like the exchange sack, which you should have gotten out of the exchange sack. And now bishop on d1 coming in on the other side, and now bringing the bishop
little
back
maneuver.
to
The pawn on
b3.
c4 hanging.
Now,
there's knight c1 is a threat.
And an exchange sacrifice in order to mess up the game just a little bit, but he's down
like a desperado.
3 pawns.
Just a desperado.
Count them, 3 pawns with only 18 seconds on his clock. This is just technique now, and Nigel just moving quickly, king to b2, and now a4, and now the other pawn. This is definitely a resignable position, but he's going to play. He's going to let Kasparov show that he can just win this game. The pawn on d3 is hanging, so b5, what pawn on d3 he's saying?
Any simplification here would be an easy win. If, for example, king takes d3, bishop takes c4 check. Very obvious win here with the 2 extra pawns.
Absolutely. It's still making moves, is short. He has been stuck on 18
F4.
seconds for quite some time, but now f4.
Follow up with king f5, king g4. I don't even think you need the pawn on a4 to win.
Agreed. This is overwhelming, and Garry Kasparov has won a thrilling battle. What a fight. We thought that he was going to win easily, but it took him all the way down to the last 30 seconds on the clock to win the game. An absolutely thrilling game.
Fantastic.
Wow.
What a fight.
This is what we paid to see it, and we didn't have to pay to see it. So this is incredible. Kasparov looking very happy, content, having won the game. But this is a serious situation for Nigel to score now.
Wow, so difficult. And it was such a messy game. This is the kind of game that Nigel, had he won, had he proven himself, he would have been like, okay, maybe my opening was not so great, but we got into complications. You didn't finish me off. I fought back and I won. But the contrary, he even let him back in the game and he won anyway.
That was incredible. What a display of fighting chess by Kasparov. When you saw his time tick down to 4 minutes, and Short had about 9 minutes on the clock, a decent position, everything seemed okay. I mean, right there you see a jovial Kasparov. Certainly see the light in his eyes and his cheeks. This has got to be a good win. You win with black again, by the way, again. And,
wow.
And now,
what a domination.
And now they break even as far as the colors are concerned, and he's up 3 points. That means a simple draw, and he can't lose the match. One draw, and he cannot lose the match. He's got draw odds to at least tie the match, and a win, the match is completely over. Still, we got 4 exciting blitz games to go, but this is what we really
It'll
came
be fun
see.
to see, but it's so difficult for Short right now to come back into the match. He needed to win today. He needed to, at the very least, not lose this rapid game. He was white. He needed to prove that in a slower time control, the white pieces meant more, and he was not able to do so. He got outplayed. The endgame was very, very unpleasant. It went from complicated to what am I doing to the bishops are dominating me.
Incredible. Well, that was quite a game, a thrilling game. We're going to have 4 more games, more thrilling than those. 4 blitz games coming up. We're going to take a short break. We will have a special guest coming after this commercial interruption. Guys?
Dedication here in this country, in the United States, worldwide, requires dramatic changes. We have to make sure that the educational system will help kids to meet the challenges of the modern world. And it's not just, to memorize things, but it's also to understand the cause of the events, the nature of certain processes. And by doing so, they need some non-conventional tools, and I believe chess is one of them. We had plenty of data from different continents, and they all proved beyond any doubts that having chess at early age, from age 6 to 9, helps kids, especially from the underprivileged areas, to sort of overcome these challenges, new challenges, and to improve their cognitive skills, their ability to see the big picture, to understand the legal framework, and also to understand that, you're responsible for your own decisions, which means for your own success or your own failure. Chess, in my view, offers sort of the best ratio of investment and return. And of course, it's extremely cheap, if you want to bring to the classroom in developing countries. So for a few dollars, you can have a chess set. I started the foundation, Kasparov Chess Foundation, here in the United States in 2002, and then moved to Europe, to Brussels, Africa, Johannesburg, Singapore, Asia Pacific, and Mexico City for Latin America. I hope more to come. So this is what will make the greatest difference for chess in years to come. And I'm very, very happy that we are closely cooperating with the St. Louis Chess Club in doing these programs here in America, and now also extending it to the rest of the world.
2014 was a great year for chess. Chess24 brought you live interactive broadcasts from top tournaments. A play zone where you can take on opponents from all around the world 24/7. Interactive beginners courses, ensuring you pick up the basics fast while having fun. A tactics trainer to sharpen your chess by solving puzzles adapted to your level. Hundreds of interactive videos. Chess24 on mobiles and tablets. Most features are free, but limited for registered members. Chess24 is offering a special premium membership for just $9.99 per month or $99 per year. See you at chess24.com.
Hello and welcome back to our show, The Battle of the Legends. Now we have a special guest with us, Maurice van der Merwe, who is the developer of an intriguing new children's program called Mini Chess. Maurice, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Maurice.
All the way from South Africa, by the way, all the way.
Delighted.
Took a great trip here. Now, we know you have this program, Mini Chess, that Kasparov himself is endorsing with the work of the Kasparov Chess Foundation in Africa. Tell us more about this program.
Maurice, the Mini Chess program is a fun, effective teaching tool used by teachers in class utilizing chess to teach children math understanding, life skills development, decision-making, problem-solving, and also emotional development. These are skills that are very important for 21st century success.
Absolutely, and we know that they're in a lot of countries in Africa right now. Can you tell us a few of the places where mini chess has spread to?
Yes. In South Africa, the mini chess program, we've got 57,000 children doing it every week in school time. And we now also branched out to countries like Kenya, Rwanda, Lesotho, quite a few African countries. This year it's going to add up to 16 African countries, including also Madagascar. the island of South Africa. So it's a program with adding a lot of benefit, getting right into the classroom, helping teachers to teach concepts that they found difficult. Now, very interactively through gameplay, children are learning very effectively.
And we understand, as I understand it, it's not just a chess tool. In fact, it's more an educational tool first.
Yeah. It's an educational program, and the game of chess, it's learning through play. And the game of chess is such a fantastic, complex game. And it allows these children to learn these many things from this game, this amazing game.
And there's a graph that we can put up on our monitor that shows the results of what this has been doing. This is pretty incredible, seeing this kind of difference in perceptual and spatial and reasoning.
Yeah.
This is after how long? When you did this, it's a 5-month study.
Yeah.
Those are pretty dramatic results.
Yeah, it's very important. The chess is a fantastic tool to achieve these things because of the complexity. And we've got 3 university studies going in South Africa on the impact of this program, the benefit for children and schools. But specifically, this result showed 100% correcting of early childhood developmental backlogs to achieve school readiness for those children.
You also have an app, I believe it is, an app for this that people can get.
Yeah, it's only launched now, so it's for all ages, it's named the Mini Chess by Kasparov mobile app. It's available on Google Play as well as App Store, and it consists of the narrator, the cheddar, the chess mouse, and the child becomes part of a game, traveling all over the world, going to Egypt, going to Japan, going even to the moon, under the sea, solving mini puzzles, more than 80 mini games, until they also learn how to play chess along the way, one piece at a time, all through gameplay, and we really invite everybody to try it.
Well,
get going.
Tell us where folks can find out about this great program.
You're welcome to visit our Mini Chess website. It's www.minichess.co.za, and we'll get hold of you if you go there.
Well, thank you so much, Marissa van der Merwe. Keep doing great work in South Africa and all over Africa, and now it seems over the world. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with the blitz match in the Battle of the Legends between Kasparov and Short in a moment.
You could fly to Venice or Paris or even Copenhagen. You could fly all over the world. But why? When you could just come to St. Louis. Your trip begins at ExploreSt.Louis.com.
I'm Mike Matheny, manager of the Cardinals and chess fanatic. Many people don't know that St. Louis has a chess history as rich as its baseball. At the world-renowned Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis, across from the World Chess Hall of Fame, our goal is to teach, play, and promote the sport. Come to the Central West End and experience all that chess has to offer.
And we're back with the Battle of the Legends. Grandmaster Garry Kasparov against Grandmaster Nigel Short here at the St. Louis Chess Club, or the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis. And reset, I'm Maurice Ashley with Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez, and that game was just fantastic. This is why people love rapid chess. The possibilities of fortunes changing by the move, momentum shifts happen all the time, and guys have to come up with fantastic ideas with the pressure on. And for us, of course, we get to call the game and not wait around for 10 minutes for the next move to come. This match so far has been just that, twists and turns everywhere.
And it's all about intensity. And how intense was this previous game? The sacrifice of the exchange almost straight out of the opening. Kasparov having to prove his compensation, Short with a very nice defense that made Kasparov quite uncomfortable at some point. Talking to Short just very briefly between games, he said, well, I thought I was just better at some point, and maybe he was right. But the clock was ticking. His position was not so terribly comfortable, and at some point he started making mistakes, and this is what happens in rapid chess.
What do you think he's thinking right now? We see him there on screen. Is he a beaten man, down 3 against one of the greatest players of all time? Or is he thinking, I've got to make a mark immediately? I've got to hit hard and hit now. I can't imagine him being very confident after losing that last game.
Right, but you don't get to number 3 in the world with, you know, the defeatist attitude going into the game. He knows it's a new game. He knows he's going to have to try to win, take it one step at a time, and maybe he'll come back. He doesn't care that much at the moment. Hey, how am I going to do in the match? He knows it looks really difficult for him at the moment. He'll probably lose, but hey, let me get some games off this guy.
Well, if they're betting in Vegas right now, Short's done. I mean, the line is Garry, Garry, Garry. But stranger things have happened, and you see there Kasparov, what makes him a great champion. He's not the kind of guy who's just going to rest on his laurels and say, well, I'm up 3, this is going to be easy. He's maintaining that intensity, that fierce look, that competitive spirit. We see Michael Khodorkovsky there, his longtime friend and confidant, and they are serious. It looks like they want to win right now and end the match, like just take care of business or maybe even draw. But let's take a look at the score to see exactly how dire the situation is for Short. 4.5 to 1.5, a 3-point lead with only 4 games to play. A win by Kasparov seals the match entirely, but it is still possible for him to lose the match. A draw, he gets at least a tie. So he's got draw odds to tie the match. With the white pieces, I don't think Garry's looking for a draw.
God, no. He's going to go for the throat, his typical style, very aggressive, try to go for the initiative, put pressure on black from the get-go. He doesn't want to waste his whites. That's not the style of player that he has ever been.
And also, if you think about it, the fact that he could defeat or demolish a number 60 player on the planet, what does that say about how strong he is right now, despite the fact that he's been retired from the game for 10 years and only plays exhibition matches? That says, I'm still Garry Kasparov, guys. Don't have any doubts. I didn't retire because I was a bad player or getting old.
And have no doubts that when he says retire, he studies a lot more chess than some of the top 100 players. He looks at it, he studies, he talks to top people.
Let's take a look at the format before the game begins. We had 2 rapid games so far. Yesterday there was a rapid and today, but now we're down to the blitz with 5 minutes and a 3-second delay. The players have probably adjusted now to all the time differentials and all that, and it's time to get going. If anything, this would be the game for Nigel to take, with Garry maybe hiccuping and playing a little bit too slowly in this game. I think if Garry settles in this game, and I mean, look at that posture.
He's focused.
Tell he's like, let's get to it. And Tony Rich
Here we
has started,
go.
and we have the game underway. D4 has been played, and C4. No Mickey Mouse draws, but B6.
It's a way of getting into the queen scene that's supposed to be very inexact. The reason is that because you don't have a quick bishop b4, white has the option of getting a very fast control over the e4 square. Now, I know Garry knows this from the beginning, and yeah, there goes a very quick f3 with the idea of e4, one of the many ways to try to punish this kind of systems.
Not good from Nigel if he's got to stop and think for a moment. Now knight to c6. Some kind of knight tango with a b6 hybrid. What is this about? And it's very important from Nigel's standpoint that he gets Garry in time pressure really fast. but this doesn't look like it's happening. Kasparov moving very quickly and naturally with knight to c3. Sooner or later, the move e4 is going to come on the board. Maybe an e5 now, just to try to mix things up and get a toehold in the center.
I'm wondering if d5 is
and
a move.
He has played the move e5. In fact, e5 and d5.
Idea. Now knight e7 is played. Also knight d4 was.
Knight dropping back. So the opening gambit, so to speak, hasn't quite worked. Kasparov hasn't hesitated too much over his moves, but now he has to make a decision as to how to prosecute the rest of this opening setup. That b6 move really does leave somewhat of a weird impression, because
but
the
at the
d6
same
square
time,
might be weak.
Right, but at the same time, in this kind of positions, you're going to put the bishop on c5, and sometimes white prevents this by playing a very quick bishop to e3. And maybe now I have that square reinforced. I don't have to actually play bishop b7 anytime in the near future if I don't want to.
Kasparov has played e3, covering the f4 square and the d4 square. Dark square is shored up, so the knight on e7 might have marched to g6, and then think about f4 as a route. But now that knight will not have too many options, so now the move c6.
It challenges this move e3, because e3 says, I want to play slow, I want to cover my bases, I already have a space advantage. Short says, no, come on. If you don't actually play aggressively with all of your pawns in the center, I'm going to challenge the center immediately.
d6, though, we have to show the fans, d6 looks possible, but knight to f5 seems to pick up this pawn, and it is not clear what the compensation would be from White's standpoint.
And sometimes even if you don't pick up this pawn, even if you just let it be, the pawn on d6, it looks more threatening than it actually is. So I don't think that's going to be played, even if it didn't lose a pawn. It seems like it does. It definitely won't be played. Now the question is, well, how do you develop in this position? I cannot play bishop d3, which is the move I really would like to play, because after pawn takes, I can just, well, maybe I cannot take here on d5.
Well, he has ignored that option and played the move knight to h3, bringing the knight out to the side. But of course, the knight intends to get rerouted back toward the center in some way, f2 being the most logical square for that knight. And now Short has to figure out how to unravel his setup. It's not exactly like he's winning anything on d5 right now.
No, the pawn is sufficiently defended. You don't necessarily want to put the bishop on b7. Well, he did. But in some cases, it gets locked out, especially if I do end up playing e4 anyways.
And e4 was played, and quickly knight to g6, and now bishop to e3. And that bishop on b7 really does not leave a great impression. And White's pieces are starting to look like
very
more the picture of harmony. And bishop to c5, a very rambunctious move, almost defiant in this position, but
he had to do it.
But does this look?
He had to do it. He had to actually try to do something in the dark squares. I really don't like his position.
Yeah, it looks foul. I was about to say, doesn't it look like a little sniffly here? I'm smelling something not so pleasant after this move. The position just looks, frankly, a little ugly from Black's standpoint. And d6. Kasparov has played d6, shutting in that bishop on b7 at least for a long run. But will this pawn become weak? I don't think so.
Well, the difference between the variation we were looking at before, when I said you cannot play d6 even if you wanted to, is that there was a bishop on f8 that was immediately hitting the pawn on d6. Therefore, it was going to be lost eventually. Without this bishop on f8, suddenly the pawn on d6 will live for a very long time. There is one thing I don't like about this move, and it's that it gives me this option. Knight f8, knight e6, knight d4. I don't exactly know what Kasparov is going to do against this kind of long route, but if I can get it in the board and actually get my knight to d4, Short will be pretty happy.
Well, he castled instead in this moment, and now queen to d2, and Short played queen to a5 against this move, and his rooks are connected, but he still has this challenge of the bone in his throat, the pawn on d6 after the move b3. That pawn is still on d6, and also his bishop, more critically, down a piece for the moment. His bishop on b7.
The bishop is the big deal. Definitely the bishop's the big deal. The problem will be for White to prove it, because his bishop on f1 isn't exactly the piece of the year. So he needs to say, hey, I'm up a piece on the king side, but what am I going to do with it?
Queen to a3.
That move is bizarre.
Black is going from strange to bizarre to the extreme. I mean,
he wants to avoid the move knight a4, because knight a4 and knight trade queens, suddenly the pawn on c5 is too weak. But Queen A3 doesn't seem like
If you've got to make moves like this to hold your position up, I mean,
that's no position to be in.
That's not breeding any confidence. And Kasparov has played knight A4 anyway.
Right.
The C5 pawn is potentially under attack. Is he really going to play Queen A5 and just nibble on the pawn? That's certainly an idea in this position. Why not?
It's not crazy. There's no reason not to do so. The position is close enough that you can.
And if you play A5 to stop that idea, then even ideas like Queen E3 could come into the game.
Right. Now, Rook FB8 is definitely the best move. The idea is that I need to play this Knight F8, Knight E6. It holds down the pawn on C5, allows me to play Knight D4. If you play Queen A5, I still have the move Queen B4 check. So that may be not so desirable right now. I know that you're looking at this position like this is ugly.
Ugly.
But
well, the most critical thing that we should be mentioning, though, is that Kasparov, despite the smooth play and looks like a clear edge, in the opening, he's only played about 14 moves.
Spent half his time.
And he spent over half his time.
Over half his time.
So ugly moves breed confusion. That, at least we can say.
But at the moment that, the bishop on b7, yes, it's really bad piece, but I don't mind Black's position as much as I minded when the pawn was on d5. I think when the pawn was on d5, Black had fewer resources. And from a practical point of view, the more resources you have, the faster you can play, the more obvious your position becomes.
And look at this, Queen c1, followed by Queen b4, checking now Queen c3, demanding from Black that he trade off queens. Is it possible that Kasparov is thinking endgame is good for me, and if you play Queen A3, I just play Queen C1 and repeat, which would seal the match, at least a tie for the match.
Not by a long shot.
Well, Knight F8 has been played right now, and the knight is headed to E6.
Yeah, I don't see the point of this maneuver so much because I could have played the same thing with the Queen on A5 and just forced this if I'm going to take on B4.
So the trade has occurred. And now Kasparov hovering over the move C5, and he has played it, cementing his pawn on D6, knight E6 bursting out into the game. That knight will have the option of going to D4, knight F2, a quick response. And the question, if the knight lands on D4, is it really just a paper tiger or is it a powerful piece?
We're going to have to see, but it's going to be the only active piece Black has. He probably wants to play a quick A5 to trade off the bishops. Not as trivial as it sounds because you're always giving up the B6 square.
It also isn't the idea for White maybe to play F4 if a knight lands on D4. Like if White were to castle queenside, for example, that knight on D4 would be under pressure. Maybe F4 comes, undermining it. It just feels like White has everything. White looks
I still agree with that.
Fabulous here.
Even this pawn on E5, I just noticed you cannot really defend it if I go knight D3.
Oh, on top of which, there are threats in the position as well. I think knight D4 is almost forced, but it doesn't look like...
But as you mentioned, knight D4, even a long castle in this position. What?
And he's played A5 instead. And as you mentioned, the move knight to D3 after A5
knight D3
tickles a pawn. Well, I guess knight D4 would be the only choice there. Knight D4.
But I still can long castle.
Right, and now you're threatening the pawn legitimately. That, well, not quite, because he can always, if you play rook E8, he can still do it. But rook to C1 instead. Rook to C1, planting. So let's get to that position on the analysis board. Rook to C1 has been played, and he's looking like he wants to put a knight on B6 maybe. You just want to reinforce the pressure on the pawn. Well,
I think he's just preventing knight D4. Now knight D3 is a threat. So if I play bishop A6, I can trade off the bishops and go knight D3, I think.
Did Black make a move here after rook to C1? I see Short. No, he did not. So Short's time is ticking down, and they're down to 1 minute and 20 seconds. Again, just coming out of the opening, and now knight to F4, G3, and a knight has been rerouted to G6 to defend
it's defending the pawn. But that pawn, did the knight start on G6?
It sure did. It went all the way to F8 to E6 to F4 back to G6, and now the trade has occurred, and knight to D3, and all of White's pieces still look fantastic in this position. Black is in deep trouble, as you see there. Black's pieces just nowhere special, and his time ticking down as well. Just a flash move, H5, hoping for something, but now the move H4 stopping that. Now knight going to H7, not sure where that knight plans to go.
Probably
King to D2, and now look at that, it's going to F8, and F4 looking to break open the position, preventing the knight from going to E6 without the move F5 coming in, forking those
No, this
two
looks
pieces.
horrible.
Rook to E8, just needing to blitz out moves now. Kasparov knows he has his opponent
What do
on
you
the
even
ropes.
play after F5? You go to knight H8, really?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that would be devastating. And he did not play F5, surprisingly so. F5 looked crushing, and F6
Because
and F5 still
I
looks
think he can
possible.
honestly do it whenever he wants. He doesn't have to rush it.
And he's played it now, and the knight going to H8.
Jeez.
Humiliating moves to have to play. And
Cheat
Kasparov
for
bringing
it.
his rook to the F5, white just dominating now, knight to F7. And the question is, can white break through? Rook to F3, black just looking for moves, knight to H3, knight to F2, not allowing the knight in the game, rook back to A7. And he's hovering, and Kasparov himself is a little uncertain, so he knocked the king over there.
They're playing a little too fast, actually. I think they realized they were in time pressure, but they're kind of forgetting. They have 3 seconds delay. They don't have to blitz out that fast. They still have about a minute each, a little bit less than that.
Well, it's easy to say on the side, and you're probably right, but now Kasparov has bled about 10 seconds off his clock, looking at this breakthrough, quote-unquote, breakthrough by black G6, and now king to D3, allowing a capture on the square. Now king G7, moving his knight away. Black's pieces look like they have absolutely nowhere to go. A3 now, his own breakthrough on that side for white.
Right, of course. You want to break through at some point on the queen side because it makes it very difficult for black to defend both flanks.
Notice how white forced black to hesitate in this moment. And this move, rook to B7.
Rook B7.
What is this about? Takes, and now knight to G4, offering a trade. And look at
no
this
way he's going to trade that knight.
Beautifully placed on E4, and now taking back on B4, and king to C4, and that
No,
pawn on
this is
B6
resigns.
is all she wrote. That pawn's going to go. This position is ugly. All of black's pieces still look bad. Now rook over to B8.
Is he really going to sacrifice an exchange?
What else can he do here? It doesn't look like it makes any sense, but he's done it. He's taken with check. The king has moved over to C4, and rook to B5. White still needing to find the knockout blow. I'm not even sure he needs it. He just brings his pieces together.
Most moves win in this position. Even the knights are still really, really bad.
The knight on F8 looks ridiculous. That pawn on F5, and now B4 controlling the C5 square. Rook to D5, rook D3 offering a trade.
Of course, you want to trade off black's best piece, which is obviously the rook on D5.
And I think he doesn't want to do that, but what else can he do? 23 seconds
You
left
have
on
to
the
take
clock.
and go knight H6 to
he's
attack the pawn on F5.
And now he's after that pawn, and Kasparov has defended it. King F7, now king to C4, and a breakthrough will happen on the queen side. Look at that king.
That king's
march
marching
down
in.
the board,
Yeah,
and he has
absolutely.
resigned. Kasparov officially sealing the deal of this match.
Crushing.
Wow,
Crushing.
dominant style. This wasn't even close. The way Kasparov just ate his opponent alive, showing why this guy is a living legend. I don't think anybody would want to play him. Most players are thinking probably, you know what, I know Carlsen was watching this match with interest, I saw on Twitter, and I'm sure a lot of the top 10 players are going, yeah, you know, it's good he retired right on time not to deal with this guy.
What a monster.
What a performance. What a performance. You did not
Nigel's
fool
just
him
sitting down.
at all.
Wow, he's shocked.
He is totally being eviscerated right now. What a crush. What a crushing match. 3 games to go and the match is over. I mean, think about that. 3 games
to
left.
go.
It was like their match back in '93.
That's correct.
Where Kasparov won 6 games to 1. They didn't have to finish the remaining games because he was dominating so much. And this just looks like a mismatch. On paper, it didn't seem like it should be that bad.
Well, it's always hard to calculate. You know, you're playing a person that was #1 in the world champion, yes, but he hasn't played in how many years? And you have this active, strong player winning opens left and right. And well,
that's right.
You think,
Short has won several tournaments. He's not like
Yes.
he's just some guy you run over and he's there at the old folks' home trying to make moves. I mean, that's not the case. This guy's an active player. He's one of the top 100 players in the world, number 60 on the live rating list. And Kasparov just made him look like, like almost like a just average run beginner almost. I mean, it was
unbelievable the
incredible.
way that Kasparov just dominated this match. Short will have to just forget about it. Play the best he can in the last few games, make it not look so bad. And
if he could win a couple of games, you know, there is the success bubble that bursts when
of course.
you know you're ahead and you think, hey, this match is over anyway. I don't have to play for anything. There's just 3 exhibition games now. You drop a couple of games, it leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. There's no part of Garry that wants that to happen.
Oh, no, absolutely. He's going to go for the kill. If he can win every single game from now on, he's going to do so. You want to draw? No way. He's going for the throat.
This guy's a gangster. I mean, He says, I'm taking you out. I don't want anybody even to recognize you with the dental records when I'm done. Just incredible score. He has racked up a total blowout. We take a look at these numbers, and 5.5, 1.5. Out of 7 games, 5.5, 1.5, with only 3 games to go. No way of catching him is short, but he's got to play for respectability at the moment because he has been dominated in the match. And Kasparov still having his game face on there, as you can tell. It's so typical of Kasparov. When we watched his tournaments, I know you're a young guy. You weren't probably around in his heyday of heydays, just starting to take up the game yourself. But I watched him. He was the king of our generation. I mean, it was Garry and then, some other guys are trying for second. That was how the tournaments worked. Dominated for 10 years, winning tournament after tournament, elite tournament after elite tournament. No Mickey Mouse tournaments. The thing about him was he always tried to run up the score.
Right.
He always tried to run up the score. A lot of players would say, I'm +4 right now.
Couple draws here, couple draws there.
The tournament's over. It's like, no. Who's the next victim?
Exactly.
I got to kill the next guy and kill the next guy. Carlsen is showing some of that himself right now.
Absolutely.
Which shows the level you have to be 2,800. That's the other thing, too. You lose rating points if you start giving away draws, right? So he goes in and thinks, if I play my best, you can't beat me. When he was in his prime, if I play my best, you just can't beat me. Or it's a rare day when you beat me, and if you do, I feel sorry for the next guy.
There's 3 games left. He knows he has the psychological edge of, hey, I just won 2. He's going to push this. He's going to push this. He's going to make Nigel suffer.
And look at Nigel. It looks like he's suffering right now. I mean, I'm glad I'm not in that position because it would be even worse. But
I can't imagine a greater honor than playing Kasparov, but man,
No,
after
thanks.
looking at this,
Alejandro, you could go ahead. We'll put Short here. I'm sure he'd be happy to do the commentary instead of playing the games. I'm sure that would be the case. But no, I mean, Garry is just...
he's a monster.
He inspires, or breeds fear. That's the other thing about him. Fear. I mean, you look at a guy like Karpov. You knew he was going to squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and get you. You look at Magnus, tremendous fighter. People know when they're playing him, it's like, okay, I'm going to lose. It's going to take about 60 moves. I'm going to have an equal position, and I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
Garry was, can I survive the first 14 moves with an equal position? And then if I'm down, I'm going to die. And
at least it'll be quick.
But can I not be humiliated on the end of some brilliancy? Because this guy would just pound you. He wants to eat your lunch, take your money away, and then go look for your girlfriend. I mean, this guy is not funny. I mean, he's just, the way he plays is beastie, and he's feeling it right now. We'll see whether or not he can keep it up with the black pieces ready back, the players at the board, and Kasparov in his fighting position yet again.
He's ready. He's ready to go for 3 more.
And Tony Rich, the referee, arbiter, has started the clock, and E4.
Here we go. And we'll be seeing another Night
on the board, and C5.
Nope,
and
it's a
Knight
close Sicilian.
C3, going into some clothesline, Knight C6. He has to recuperate, by the way. I mean, it's hard to do.
Right. It's one of the favorite openings of a lot of English Grandmasters to start the game with E4, C5, Knight C3. Very flexible. It can allow you to go into the open Sicilian in many different lines.
And Knight to E2. You could always play D4 right now to switch up. If Kasparov plays Knight F6, D4 is possible to switch back into some kind of open Sicilian territory and avoid the Knight off completely.
That could even go back into the Sveshnikov after they remove D4, pawn takes, Knight takes E5. Or into a classical Sicilian. And we're going to see it.
And he's done it. D4. And so he doesn't have to see any part of that favorite Najdorf of Kasparov's, and
We're
D6.
See a classical Sicilian. Usually this is replied with the move Bishop G5 going into a Richter Rouser attack.
That has happened. E6, Queen D2, Bishop to E7, solid line, classical variation, castles queenside.
A lot more popular nowadays to play this Bishop E7 line instead of Bishop D7, the other big alternative.
And now we see that this classic position, it was played a lot in the 80s and the 90s before losing some favor, and now H4 is on the board. An interesting idea. So Garry, look over to the right there, like, wait a minute, what's this move again? Have I seen it before? Let me get into my database and see what I need to do against this move. So H4 is on the board.
Idea. Several suggestions here for black. For example, he could take on D4, Queen takes D4, and go Queen A5. This is partially why you play the pawn to H4, because it's already defending the bishop in some of those variations.
A6 has been played.
A6 is also very common.
And Short getting down to it.
And I have the feeling both players, even though they know all the general ideas, aren't exactly on book right now.
So king to b1 has been played, and core ideas needing to be understood here by Kasparov. If time's even on the clock, as they've made much quicker decisions in this game than they did in the last game.
Oh, much quicker.
You should be in the opening with 4.5 minutes. That's about right. So 10 moves in, and Kasparov now having to make a decision on how to play the game. But we have to say, this is not his trademark Sicilian. He's played the move h6.
H6 doesn't actually threaten anything, just by the way.
Exactly, because you take on g5, you're going to open up a file for that rook on h1.
Right.
So now Nigel has to think, do
F4 is the
ignore.
most common idea.
F4.
We go back into a very typical variation that usually starts with the move f4, and when black goes h6, then they answer h4. So it's kind of a transposition.
And every time we see Garry look to the right there, it's like he's searching his memory banks for what to do next. What is this line again? Let me just get back into the theory. I know it's right. I know I'm okay. That kind of thing. And he's played the move bishop to d7, preparing the move b5, demonstration on the queen side. And now White's going to have to show that he has something with this maneuvers, this pawn pushes f4 and h4.
Yeah, usually you're kind of waiting for black to take on g5. It never happens.
And he's taken on f6, and after bishop takes, knight to f3, attacking, so to speak, attacking the pawn on d6.
Although I do wonder why he didn't play knight f3 first. But this looks possible. You're attacking that pawn on d6. It's a real threat because the bishop on d7 will be hanging behind it. Sometimes black can simply decide to sacrifice it and play queen a5, just saying, I don't care. But that might run into knight d5 in this position.
Right, knight d5. Well, actually, no, because the knight is protecting the queen
it's protecting
in this
the queen.
position.
This
So
position
that won't work out. But and no well, queen takes d6 doesn't work. So what's the point? Queen a5 does look
pretty tempting.
like a nice idea. The only thing, no, he's going to take on c3.
No, if you take on d6 and I take on c3 and then you take on d7, then queen b4 looks devastating.
That's all she wrote.
That's
That's
all she
it.
wrote. Forcing
Make on
b3,
b3.
queen a3, and that's it.
Bye-bye. So queen a5 does look like a strong move,
There
and
you
he's
go.
played it.
There you
Queen
go.
a5 is on the board, and Short now having to face this counterplay by black. If d6 is not really hanging, you made that point. Why did he take on f6 first and produce a bishop on the square?
Right,
instead of trading and then playing knight f3.
Now the question is, e5, can I play this?
And after
It looks
takes.
incredibly risky. Queen takes d7. I'm just going to assume
then
there's a refutation. I just not entirely sure.
And then, because if rook d8, let's show that. A rook to d8, queen takes on b7. Rook to b8 is not on tap because of queen takes
c6.
on c6, and it's almost
but
hanging there.
No
It's
cigar.
not quite. And e5 has been played, and he has taken the bishop on d7 and e4 immediately by Kasparov. What's this about? This allows the queen to retreat, but it opens up a line for his bishop on f6.
Now, this pawn looks poisoned because after rook fd8, there's a skewer down on d1, a very important distraction tactic. The knight had to go on c3 to defend this rook on d1, which is checkmate at the end.
But now up a piece is Short, and he's just played the move knight to e5. Knight to e5. What is this move about? After queen takes, e4 was played, and now knight to e5. And he's blocked the long diagonal.
He blocks
to
the
be
long
sure.
diagonal. He is going to be threatening knight takes c6 after I take on b7. Kasparov has to prove why he is down a piece.
He is indeed down a piece at the moment. The move e4. He thought he banked on that move doing more, but now this move knight e5, and Kasparov is shaking his head. He's shaking his head. It looks like he missed this opportunity here when he took on the e5 square and played e4, and now knight e5 is saying, show me. Show me what you got. I'm up a piece. And one of the things about being up a piece is you can always maybe sacrifice the queen for some stuff if things get crazy. Is it possible that Kasparov has just missed this line? Let's take a look.
Maybe he misevaluated something, but I'm not entirely sure what. He can take on e5 and just play for the compensation. He would have
But can he play?
pawns.
Can he play the move rook a d8 right now?
No, if I take on...
And if you take and then take on, let's go with queen b7, take on d1. knight takes on d1, and then queen e1. What is that? Is that just Mickey Mouse stuff?
No, it's pretty real. But the problem
And
here is...
Kasparov now banging his own leg. I mean, that's not a good sign. He's not happy. What to do
Well,
next?
what I'm wondering here is if I take on c6. Actually.
And bishop takes on e5 has been played. Pawn takes, and he has played the move. He has played and allowed this line. Look at it. He's going down the path.
Oh, but the
And
bishop first. He first takes on d8, which is important.
And he's threatening mate. Let's be clear. He's threatening mate on d1. Mate after this move, and the
But
bishop.
if bishop e2, what are you going to play? Queen takes h1, I take on c6. I'm still ahead a little bit of material.
A little bit, but now rook to d8 has been played, threatening mate yet again. And black will be able to pick up maybe a couple of pawns on the king side, maybe just one. The bishop on e2 is not the greatest piece. But white could take on a6 and have 3 connected passed pawns. But how does he deal with the threat right now on d1? If king c1 isn't queen, well, I'm thinking queen e1 looks powerful.
It looks very powerful.
Hitting the bishop and also threatening queen d2. How do you defend against that?
I don't see a way at the moment. Yeah, that looks very, very powerful.
The knight's hanging right now. I mean, that means he has to play a move like b3.
Right, because checkmate is hanging.
Because checkmate is hanging.
Well, you could play a4, is what I would play, because you want those pawns as quick as possible.
Indeed. Point well taken. So king to c1 looks like queen e1 refutes it, and it doesn't seem like he has a move. So we're guessing
A4?
great suggestion, a4, and just give. But also, doesn't black now get a pass pawn himself? e3.
Looks winning.
And I mean, that looks like
actually, you
that
don't
looks like,
have this because of check.
Oh, and then you lose that.
You lose that very
good
important
So
pawn.
he's played instead b4.
Aha, actually maybe even smarter than the move a4, because here it's not so important where the... Wow!
Kasparov has ignored taking
Just
the
played
2 pieces.
queen e1.
Like queen e1, hitting
never
the
mind.
pawn
B4
on b4.
looked very smart if you have to take on d1, but you don't have to.
But you don't have to. Kasparov ignoring that and whipping out this move, queen to e1, threatening
Now,
the b4
very
pawn
important, you
and
don't
the bishop.
have to move queen takes e4 because rook takes d1 is a pin.
Ouch.
So you cannot defend both pieces like this.
So queen a6, allowing queen takes b4. That extra pawn that he was counting on is now gone. King to c1, and at least white is holding up everything at the moment. Queen d2 check, king to b2, and black can draw if he, forget the draw.
Forget the draw.
Let's
Rook
try,
e8 check.
let's try this one.
I'm going for checkmate. What draw?
What
this
draw?
That's just
Give me food. Look at this, bishop to b5, and now
that queen b4?
queen b4 looks like it simply wins.
Queen takes d1 is also
The bishop.
just winning.
Black is for choice.
He has a choice of
Black is for choice, and it's almost resignable. Now rook takes, and the attack is on. A raging attack. The pawn on e4, up in exchange. This is resignable. There's no reason to even make another move here. It looks just crushing
Don't even have a
yet
pawn.
again by Kasparov. He's just a train rolling downhill, and he's played the move knight to c3. That's just desperation. I mean, he could, in the worst case, take on e5 and just be up a pawn.
Rook a5
and the
also really
exchange.
strong.
And he has taken the pawn. Rook takes, and he's casually taken that pawn, by the way. He just knows
He's
it's
completely
over.
winning.
There's
Completely
nothing to do.
winning.
This is the throw in the towel.
Yeah, you're up
Mercy rule.
so much material.
In effect, look at this. He could just play e3.
There's no danger. I don't see any threat with that.
There's no
E3.
threat. e3. Thank you.
Yes.
Push the pawn. I'm going to queen it. What are you going to do about it? This is out.
This is out.
This is
It's
out.
over.
This is just blood. I mean, it's
That
terrible.
was ugly.
It's just stop the clocks, and he has resigned.
Wow.
Kasparov just
Nice.
racking up the score right now against Short. The terrible thing about momentum in chess,
Wow.
especially in blitz, once it starts, it's hard to staunch the bleeding. It just keeps going, and Kasparov feeling the confidence, feeling the surge.
That was so
Playing
nice.
amazing
That was so nice. And I want to take a very quick look at that very important point, because when you mentioned here in this position the move rook d8, sorry, rook a d8 you mentioned, right?
Yes.
I thought, okay, this is not a good idea, because if I take, and I play something like queen takes c6, I didn't think that this was all that bad for white. Sometimes I can even go, for example, bishop c3. Now, I think that taking on d8 might not lose.
But why bother?
Taking on d8 and taking on c3, I think this is even quite good. However, the point was that with bishop e5 first, you avoid these ideas, and after pawn takes rook d8, queen takes b7, you get into this line, and the queen on e1 comes with decisive effect.
That was
That was
incredible.
beautiful. Bishop
takes
e5,
on
so
E5
precise.
first. That was something else, taking on e5 first, and then this idea. I mean, there was no way to defend the knight on d2 while you were busy eating food.
Yeah.
Back home, people were raiding your refrigerator. And I mean, look at this, queen e1, and nothing to do. He had to play bishop e2.
It's
and now
the only
let's
move in the position. Queen takes h1.
Queen takes h1, and the game
Queen
continues.
c6 is forced.
Before we continue with that, let's just first take a look at the score. I don't think we want to see the score.
I don't want to see it.
So bad, but let's look at it. 6.5, 1.5. This is just not a good number. This is when we say you put up a crooked number in baseball, and this is like a crooked inning. 6.5, 1.5. That's a beatdown. That's just a straight beatdown. They would stop the fight in boxing. And what to do? It's Garry Kasparov pacing there. He is getting ready for the next game. And so we will take a short break and be back with the next game.
Mike Matheny, manager of the Cardinals and chess fanatic. At the world-renowned chess club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis, across from the World Chess Hall of Fame, St. Louis' status as the chess capital of the nation is on full display. With a welcoming environment and Scholastic outreach program that works with over 100 schools, our goal is to teach, play, and promote the sport. So whether you've played for years or never before, we invite you to experience all chess has to offer.
Hi, my name's Mike Wilmering. I'm the Director of Development for the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis and the World Chess Hall of Fame. On Tuesday, May 5th, we need your support. We'd like to rally the voice of the international chess community to help us raise money for Give STL Day, a 24-hour period of giving in which nonprofits across the city try to raise money for their cause. Help the voice of the international chess community be heard. Please visit stlouischessclub.org and pledge your support. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Welcome to chess.com. Chess.com is social. Now you can play chess with your friends whenever you want, whether that's middle of the day or middle of the night. You can get instantly matched up with one of over 5 million other members from around the world. You play live games in real time, turn-based games at your convenience, or tournaments with anyone at any time. Chess.com is mobile. You can play online from your computer, or you can play on the go from your tablet or your smartphone. No matter where you go, whether you're at work, grabbing a bite to eat, or just enjoying some time at the park, your games are there with you, and keeping multiple chess games going has never been easier. Chess.com is for learning. Don't just play chess, get better. The best chess training resources have never been more accessible. Learn essential chess strategy quickly and easily with the extremely popular Tactics Trainer tool. Improve your game in ways you didn't know were possible with training videos by chess masters. And regardless of where you're at now, take your game to the next level with multiple simple-to-use training tools. Chess.com is for everyone. Over 250 million chess games.
And we are back with the Battle of the Legends. I am Maurice Ashley with Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez. And in the break, Alejandro, we're actually rooting for Short to win a game. Like, guy, please.
That's what I want.
Please,
make it
get
stop.
Killed. Make it stop. It's so painful. It
was
so
3 in a
painful.
row. It's 3 in a row today. Let's not even count yesterday. This is not a good day for Nigel. He's trying. He's with the black pieces right now. We got some opening moves. This is definitely not the most theoretical of variations, but well, we'll see if Nigel can come up with something.
We will see. It seems like it almost doesn't matter what kind of position he has. You know, one of those things when you're playing a better player and you're playing blitz, and if you're playing, for example, Nakamura, he'll make you look bad and say, okay, I'll have a better position, I'll crush you. I'll have an even position, I'll crush you. Oh, you were better that game too, I'll crush you in that one too. And that's the kind of situation Nigel Short is in right now. He's just feeling the force of Kasparov's moves. Impressive moves. Come on.
Very impressive. The way that he handled that initiative in the last game, yes, he was down a piece, but man, did this guy have the sense of where the ball was rolling, all the tactics. Well, suddenly they all worked out.
They all worked out, and Short is just mystified right now by this display, power chess by Garry Kasparov. And now they have a very solid position on the board. but we know it's going to blow up within a couple of minutes.
Right, a typical anti-French position, very quiet with his D3 ideas. This bishop E2 maybe not so common. Usually the bishop is fianchettoed, but okay, it's quiet. I like Short's position already, but as you said,
the position doesn't matter.
Position doesn't matter. He needs to get into the game.
You've got to get into the game. You've got to pressure the guy. He barely has any moments when you feel like Kasparov is truly sweating.
Right.
I mean, it's always, well, Gary's attacking again. Oh, Gary just sacked. Oh, yeah, there goes Gary again. That's all. We're like broken records now because every single game, the guy is fighting for the initiative. And when you try to refute the initiative, he comes up with these pyrotechnics.
Well, I'm kind of missing the game that he lost on time. At least we said something different.
Wow. And even that game, he was dominating. So, again, Kasparov doesn't want to let down. Does not want to let down, but he did play conservatively with this opening, this move E4 and D3. And
yeah, much more conservative, but, you know, he's just trying to outplay him. He played the move E5, typical idea of this Grand Prix-ish system, or the King's Indian attack, more or less. Of course, as I said, the bishop being on E2, it's a little weird.
Knight back to F1 after knight to D7. Knight BD7, knight to F1 has been played, so Kasparov in the old Fischer style with the King's Indian attack, looking to get some play on that side. And now he's expanded with the move D4 after knight to C6, guarding his pawn on E5.
Unlike most King's Indian attacks where you try to just hold on to the pawn without playing D4, he didn't have a choice in this position. So I think this looks more like a normal French position, but I wouldn't see why Black should complain. I mean,
Bishop A6 has been played, looking to trade off that bishop that usually is a problem in the French.
Huge problem. You want this bishop on D3 targeting the king side. It's not going to happen, and the bishop's going to come off the board immediately.
I can guarantee you that if Garry loses this game, he will not be happy.
I don't know.
I mean, that's just the kind of person he is. The match is over, long over. You can gift the guy 2 games. If Garry loses 1 game, he's not going to be happy, and he's traded on A6.
Garry might be a very generous person, but not over the board.
Not at all. Absolutely not. And now Queen D3 attacking the rook on A6.
Now, Morozevich was famous for playing this ideas of C5, B5, B4.
And C4 is now on the board. C4 chasing the queen. And Kasparov hovering there, deciding exactly where to put the piece, and now bringing his hand back. Little hesitation. Also on the clock as well. He's down to 2 minutes and 46 seconds. This is the first game where Nigel has had a totally dominant position, both on the clock. Well, maybe I overstated saying it's on the board.
Yeah, he's not dominating.
He's not dominating on the board.
But he's doing okay.
But he's doing, let's just say that. The first really okay position and be this far ahead in the blitz on the clock. Knight to E3, and now B4. Knight to G4 by Garry, and it looks like Kasparov is sniffing a king-side demonstration, a king-side attack.
It's a very typical idea in this kind of positions, but Black's attack is relatively faster than it usually is. I feel that he got a couple of tempi in for free. And now the question is, what exactly can I sacrifice on the king side?
Well, A3 trying to slow down that side, trying to block it up. If you play the move B3, then it's entirely blocked on that side, and White can start to think about how to attack on the other side of the board. This move really puts question to the last move, A4.
Right, A4 maybe a little premature, just a little bit.
How should he proceed, right? Because now he has to do something. He's taken on C3 to keep lines open, and he'd like to put something on B3, but we saw him put a knight on B3 in one of the games and got, well, he managed to draw that game, the very first game of the Rapid, but the knight proved to be, again, not a really powerful piece. It was just sort of sitting there on that square.
I wonder if the best move here is to simply play rook B6 and rook B3. The idea is that if you do take on A4, I just don't care. I finish my development, and I'm saying your queen doesn't really belong on the queen side. You're going to have to waste tempi bringing it back. And thanks for opening the A file for me.
Sort of a Benko-style sacrifice, but here in a different structure. So that is an interesting idea. Good point, but he should do it quickly. Do something.
Right. Because he can play queen A5.
And he has played it. And he has played it. Rook to B6.
Okay.
Sacrificing a pawn for the initiative. And Kasparov said, give me that. I got it.
Pawn.
Prove it. My A pawn is passed. And I'm going to go back to the other side. Now, this is the strength of this capture.
Right.
He could go back and attack on the other side while Black is busy massing all his forces on the queen side.
Yeah, queen A8 was played.
Queen A8, and he's brought his queen back to C2 after a little bit of a wiggle there.
A little hesitation.
And now it's clear. White will try to figure out how to mate Black on the other side. And H5 saying, get the knight out of here.
A nice little detail of a move that prevents some sacrifices in this particular position. It doesn't seem like you can play knight f6 or knight h6, so why not kick out the knight right now?
Which would force it to go to e3 in this position.
Blocking in the pieces.
Garry doesn't want to play knight to e3.
I don't think he has a choice.
But he
doesn't want to do it.
And there, Black has slowed down White's attack on the other side, and now he can look to his side, but g4. Like insisting, not a chance. I am not going to just sit here. And you see Nigel sitting up in his chair. Now this move, crazy idea. G4, Kasparov really feeling himself now, attacking with this move. G4, wow. And taking on G4. Now the G file is open. So Garry's basically saying,
thank you for the file.
You got the queen side.
Right.
Do what you want. But I'm going to move my king, and I'm going to take, there he goes, king h1. I'm going to go for the G file attack. Show me why this is bad. I mean, his instincts for the attack are just incredible. And you're going to have to think about this. After this, knight a5, he's still paying attention, ignoring the attack that's mounting against his king.
This move looks a little slow. This rook 8, b7, it just felt a little slow. I don't know why he didn't try to capture the bishop on c1 quicker with knight a5.
Well, that's too late for the story now, because a new story is being written. Rook g1 is on the board, and knight h6 is a terrific threat for the queen coming into h7.
Yeah, knight h6 followed by queen h7 looks devastating.
Oh no, his queen has giddy up back to that side, queen e8. That shows
defending the pawn on f7. The point is that after knight h6, I have to move king h8, and since the pawn is defended on f7, now you don't have a, I don't know, killer blow at the moment at least?
At the moment, maybe, but you know Kasparov is starting to calculate some knockout punches, or at least a way to increase the tension in the position. He has moves like bishop h6 he could consider right now.
Knight g5 also looks quite good.
Knight g5 threatening mating in 2 on h7. This is all white. I'm sorry. If you take this position and drop it in front of you and say, Alejandro, what do you want?
By the way, white's up a pawn.
Yeah, the a pawn is, when we trade off, if you stop my attack some miracle way, then I'll just queen the a pawn. So this is the deal now. Rook to b2 after bishop g5, rook b2, and now queen to c1. And the question is, what is Black doing on the queen side? Well, wait a second. Knight b3 is impossible. So queen takes,
because queen takes
rook. So how does Black do anything on that side? King f8, trying to hide, trying to run some kind of way, but I doubt this is going to be effective. Queen to f4.
Bishop h6 looked devastating. I think that Kasparov might have missed this move.
Yeah, but queen f4 looks like a money move also. Queen f4, and he has 5 pieces trained at that poor king. The queen now trying to give it some air. Queen to d8. Kasparov is on the attack, and he knows it. Even knight f6 might be something to think about right now.
And now he played bishop h6.
And now he played bishop h6 with his queen
even easier
to
calculate now, because if you take with the knight. Checkmate on g8, checkmate on f7.
That's a body blow. Bishop h6. This is over. This is completely over. And look at those ridiculous pieces now on the queen side. The knight on a5, the 2 rooks.
It was just too slow.
It was way too slow. And Kasparov, that move g4, opening up lines and proving himself. Rook to where? E2. That just allows the bishop takes on g7, and he cannot take back. And that has indeed happened. King to e8.
But okay.
That's 2 pawns now. And knight to h6, continuing the mating attack.
Queen takes
queen f7. Mate is threatened. He has to give up the pawn as well with knight b6 and queen f7. He's up 3 pawns now. And now knight g5, another piece exploding into the sector. The e-pawn is definitely going down. This is resignable right now. He's trying to get to the queen side. Queen to e6, 4 pawns down, king to b8. This is all over but the crying. What is he going to do playing on in this position? Kasparov just has to solidify everything. Forget that. Knight in to f7. He has so many pieces ganged up on that side of the board, but at least the king is safe, maybe.
Not even that. Not even that. It's not even safe yet.
And now knight back to f5, threatening the bishop.
If somehow miraculously Kasparov blundered a full rook here, he would still be better.
He's still playing. Very good point. And now rook takes f2, getting back one of the pawns. Oh, the bishop was not hanging on e7 for the moment. And now he's just thinking, is Kasparov, he knows this is over, but he's got 50 seconds left. Now knight to d6, allowing this trade.
Yeah.
And now knight takes again, attacking the rook on b8. And his rook is thinking of coming into the game on g8 at some point as well. That's going to be
a5 and b6.
A big danger.
Not really that much of a threat. All they're doing is holding down the king. The rook on b7 looks...
And now he sacrificed the queen?
Well, sacrifice is a nice word.
What is that about? Queen takes on G7.
Okay,
Thank you
just
very
take-
much for the queen. And this.
Any random move here wins Rook G1 looks completely devastating. You cannot even play Rook H7
What
because
about
of Queen
Rook?
G8.
Is that a knight on B6 right now?
Right.
He has played Rook G1.
Right.
And that's going to trade off the last pair of.
Yeah, you cannot play Rook H7 threatening checkmate because of Queen G8 check. So, this is just
This looks terrible.
resigns.
Kasparov
This is
is
just
now
resignable.
sitting back. He knows he's just like
Easy.
a cat with a mouse right now.
Well,
it's terrible.
Very easy.
It's terrible. What a horrible situation. Short just now realizing there's just no way to fight back. It's just when the wheels come off, the car can't run. It's simple. And he's resigned.
Yes.
Kasparov realizing it's like, I'm sorry, guy. We have to play these games, and I just have to be myself. And you saw him kind of shrug his shoulders there, but as soon as he leaves and goes to his confidant there, he's like, I won. Thank you very much.
This was horrible.
Looking confident. This was the worst of all the games, by far. By far. This was the worst of all the games.
I mean, I even think that Kasparov missed a blow by not playing Bishop H6 immediately.
What are you talking
and
about?
his position. And then I realized, wait, every move that he plays wins.
You want him to like get the knife out while he's on the ground, shoot him while he's on the ground, and then stab him while he's dead. I mean, come on, give the guy a break. This is just terrible.
This was horrible.
This is not.
Oh my God.
This is not cool at all. I'm so glad I didn't have to be the one playing this guy because he's just a monster. And the thing is, Short's not this bad. I mean, Short's not this bad.
No.
It's just Kasparov. He's looking like Michael Jordan, right? Like you come sit and play against me, I'm gonna dunk on you. Like that's what Jordan would do to people. Just you get me mad. I remember speaking of which, like the Dream Team way back in the early '90s when the Dream Team got together, and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, they'd say, wait a minute, we're still pretty good, and particularly Magic would have an ego about him. No, I'm running the Dream Team, and Jordan said, okay. Let's think about this for a second. And they'd go on the floor, and all of a sudden, Jordan's flying through the air, dunking on everybody, making passes, catching stuff, making threes. And then they were sitting in the locker room afterwards with Magic and Larry, and Jordan walks in and he says, guys, there's a new sheriff in town.
Nice.
And Magic said, he ain't lying. And this guy, when he plays, is like, he ain't lying. He's the man. I mean, he plays to destroy you. Don't get him angry, because he's going to destroy you. And even when he's destroying you, he's still looking to stab you. I mean, it's bad.
How do you beat Short this badly?
No.
How is this even possible?
No, I wouldn't even have expected Carlson to run up the score this badly. I mean, yeah, fantastic player, but to just eat the guy alive.
No, it was this every game.
Every game.
Every game.
Every game.
And this one?
This was the worst one.
I mean,
I could very easily have been on the black side here, just getting eaten.
I don't think we should show this to children. This bloodbath is just horrible.
Stop it. My director is telling us that we have to show the score. I mean, leave the guy alone. 7.5, 1.5, that one win on time from a desperate position. Garry Kasparov just having a dominating event. Nigel Short in bad form. Maybe distracted by some of the events of recent week and also some jet lag he mentioned as well. But whatever the combination of factors, he had to play the game. He agreed to play the match. Coming off his brilliant win in Thailand in the Thai Open, this is not the way you want to continue. It's like, dude, I just won a great tournament. I was fly high. Chess is mean. Chess
is very cruel. It makes you face your demons, and right now, I think all of his demons came together at the same time. Wow, was he blown out of the water. He just wants to play the last game, finish it, say, thank God there is no day 3.
Thank you. And anybody suggests this rematch, forget about it. It ain't going to happen. No, not at all. Not unless I'm living in St. Louis waiting for the guy to come right off a plane from Moscow or something. Because right now he's like, it's just devastating. Ridiculous. The match, I mean, just beastie. Beastie chess.
And it's not even that there was a lot of mistakes and then somehow Short lost and coincidentally, everything went wrong. It's just amazing chess by Kasparov. It's aggressive. It's incisive, energy,
Did
strong.
you see G4? H5 looked like a move, right? H5, I'm going to slow you down on that side. And he said, no, that's not how it works. I'm going to drop my knight back, and I'm going to use your attacking move against you. I mean, beautiful chess there. G4, getting the knight back onto G4. That just showed the failure of the idea of H5 completely. And maybe Short should have kept the lines closed, but he'd have to jettison a pawn to do it, like with H4 or something.
We could say a million things Short could have done differently, but at the end of the day,
it might not have mattered anyway.
It might not have mattered, but what did happen, his king from G8 to B8, and that cost him like
four pawns.
Four
pawns in a row. Yeah.
Really, that was it?
4. Yeah. Well, you got to lose more. Well, let's take a look at a very important event was announced earlier this week. The Grand Chess Tour, which will take place in Norway Chess, which is in June, the Singfield Cup happening in October, and the London Chess Classic happening in December in London. These 3 tournaments will be a part of a tour that the top players in the world will be playing for over $1 million in prize money. And we will, of course, have full coverage of that right here at uschesschamps.com. That should be fantastic. But let's get back to the game, the final game. We've got to wrap things up with this game. And now Short has gone for this line, D4 and Bishop G5. This is sort of a tepid line, staying out of any theory, knight BD2.
Right, it's a famous line for Andrakin. He loves playing this variation recently in very strong tournaments, including the Grand Prix and the World Cup in 2013.
Well, if he can just win a game, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
It doesn't even matter which variation he chooses. He just needs to win.
Just win a game.
Just win a game. Doesn't matter how.
And you know
Flag
how
him,
it is.
kick him, I don't care.
If he had won the second to last game, and then Garry wins the last game, then Garry feels like, okay, I lost attention a little bit, and then I won the last game. But to lose the last game, to walk out, Kasparov is not, he doesn't want any of that. Like, no. I refuse to lose the last game. Like, that's how he's thinking right now.
That's how he operates.
That's just the way he is. He's wired into his DNA, if you will, hardwired, to borrow a short term from earlier this week. But Bishop H4, and now
it's simply a position, pretty slow, relatively strategic.
And G5. Bishop to G2 and knight H5 going after that bishop.
The idea
on
is
G3.
that, the bishop on G3 cannot move, so it's going to be captured by the knight. The question then becomes, is it really worth it to lose that many tempi for the bishop? Also because in this particular position, white gets E4 in with 1 move instead of in some other positions.
And he's played E3 instead of E4.
A little less, exciting, a little less
very
attacking.
Solid move. Maybe I wanted to extend too much after all the craziness that has happened so far. So E3, super solid. Knight to D7, that is. Knight to D7 has been played, holding off on trading on the G3 square.
Okay.
Preparing a potential E5 or maybe C5.
A little slower,
about
definitely.
Those moves, in the situation, but the knight definitely now on D7. And now bishop to D3 has
pretty
been
natural.
Playing. Very natural developing move.
Now you can see both sides are holding off a little bit on a couple of decisions. White doesn't want to castle immediately because if black takes on G3, I can always take on G3 and open up the rook. So they're playing a little bit of the waiting game here, waiting to see what the other player is going to do.
Indeed, a bit cagey, and now the move E6 by Kasparov, not doing anything special in the middle, and castles now has been played. So Kasparov can trade on G3 whenever he likes. He might do it now, but there's no real reason to rush with this move.
Absolutely not.
But he no longer has to worry about that H-file opening up because the king is on that side.
Right. It's very difficult to reroute again the rook to H1. It's not easy to move the king out of the way. But as you said, you don't have to take on G3 immediately. There's other moves in the position. You can play B6. Queen E7 is very natural.
And Queen E7 has been played. And now A4, letting black know that white suspects the black king might decide to park itself on the queen side by castling queen side. So A4, a slight...
Right, it's slightly annoying to hide the king anywhere on the board right now, especially after you've made the committing moves H6 and G5, because the king side, well, it's a little open. There's kind of some problems in the diagonal, B1, H7. The queen side you never really want to go to.
And now F5, hello, I'm sorry, but this is a move. And Short sat up in his chair, yet again, Kasparov making wild pawn moves. They've been very effective for him in this match. These are the kind of moves you might feel, now knight dropping back to E1. You've seen this move just in an average game, you would say, come on, what is this guy doing? But he's been so effective doing it game after game after game, playing these aggressive pawn moves that it's just almost standard now for him. And now,
right, but out of all the pawn moves he's made in this match, this is what I like the least. If he takes on g3, now I suddenly have the ability to take with the f-pawn. A little anti-positional at first, but the idea is that both the e4 and g4 breaks might be in the works. Black's a little underdeveloped.
Absolutely. Black needs a couple of moves. His knight to f6, and actually he could think about knight f6
immediately,
like df6 right now, since he can always capture on the g3 square. I was thinking about it, but e4 is hiding. So it's kind of funny because e4, f4 could come, right? So white can't quite play e4 yet because of the f4 move.
Well, you can actually, because I counter trap, I think. Oh no, you still have queen f7, defending your knight on h7.
And he has played knight d to
that.
f6. So that means e4 is not on call just yet, but f4 himself, and now the bishop has to be captured. So knight takes and h takes on g3 has occurred. And now white is thinking about the move e4, but what if, and if black plays d5, then that opens up the e5 square for one of black's, for one of white's pieces.
Knights.
But it's not entirely clear that that's that bad for black.
No, but at the same time, it's definitely not as aggressive. And once I get my knight to e5, I think it's going to be relatively happy position for white.
Draw?
No. It's a blitz game. There are no draws in blitz games.
There are no draws in blitz. I got you. All right, so now Kasparov down to only 2 minutes on his clock, and again, it's Kent, and he's castled kingside, castled in this position.
Allowing the move e4, but if you open up the position for the pair of bishops, you always have to be careful. On the other hand, e4 seems so tempting.
And it's been done. Like, you got to be careful, so what?
It's your last game, just
caution to the winds and
just
play the move and be the one who's attacking for once.
For once?
So e4 challenging Kasparov to defend this position, and I tell you, if Kasparov loses, we will see someone not so happy. I mean, he'll be very upset losing despite the final score. And now he's got to stop and think and look at the time disparity. Incredible. Nigel with 3:34, and Kasparov after this e4 move that he castled right into, by the way.
Right.
He's stopping and think about it.
He had to see e4. He had to see e4. It's the most tempting move for white in this position. There's some drawbacks to it, of course.
And c5 in response. What is that?
c5.
What is that about? You know, it's funny. We see the players rock back and forth after some moves. It just shows how they feel about the move that was just played. And we saw Nigel rock in his chair like, what is that? I'm just going to take on c5. Show me what the point of this weird move is. And he's like, d5. c5 followed by d5.
And
this
the point is you
want
to take on c5 with the queen.
And pawn takes on f5, and now he's going to take with the queen with check.
Followed by maybe a knight g4 at some point.
And the check, and the king has moved into the corner, and he's now taken on f5, and he's won his pawn back. And Kasparov absolutely refusing to let white have the initiative. I mean, this guy's an initiative hog, and despite the fact that white was trying to open up the game, he's figured out a way to unbalance the position, make it totally crazy, and it's not just a walk in the park for white anymore.
No, not at all. And white would be better if the knight g4 resource wasn't so dangerous, but it is. Knight g4 comes in, it's really annoying. It threatens knight f2, it threatens knight e3. It's not so easy to parry. Yes, there's going to be knight b3, and the knight's going to be able to blockade the isolated pawn.
And knight b3 was answered by queen to e3, putting his queen in the heart of white's position and threatening the pawn on g3.
I thought it was going to kick out by rook f3, though.
And instead, queen to f3, offering a trade.
Perhaps even better, because the endgame doesn't seem very pleasant for black.
And queen e8, he's wiggled his queen back, looking for the h5 square. Maybe that was the problem with rook f3. He was thinking about going queen e8. What a maneuver. His queen was on one side, and he switched it. Now he's thinking of knight g4 and queen h5.
He does, but at the moment d5 hangs with check. So I'm wondering after knight d4, because knight d4 is a very important move. If you put the knight on g4, then I have queen takes d5 check maybe. Just
and then if the king moves?
Quickly. And then I think I can survive with knight f3.
Let's take a look at that on the analysis board, please. Because
you do have knight e3, though.
Absolutely critical position to look at. On the analysis board, we can get it. So the knight d4.
Right. So knight d4, there's the idea of knight g4, hanging the pawn with check, but after king h8, knight f3 covers the very important h2 square. What it doesn't cover is the knight e3 fork. Now, this is just an exchange, and white would have a lot of compensation
and knight
for
c2 was answered by knight to g4 instantly. So we've got, I don't know what the knight's doing all the way over on c2. I mean, the guy just played knight g4 and said, you want my d pawn? You know I sack pawns for breakfast.
Wait, what?
And in fact...
Wait, what is he doing?
In fact, I don't get it. He's played king g1, and now...
Wow, very cold-blooded, but...
Cold-blooded is
really?
right. Allowing Kasparov to penetrate down if he wants to h2.
All the way down to
and
h2.
h1.
And this is just analysis, but I guess he's okay if I do all this.
That is why he moved his knight to c2. He's going on another king march. We saw his king march the last game, but now bishop to d7.
At least in this one, he's not losing material immediately.
But hold the fort, because a rook on e8 will be finished. It's going to be mate if he solidifies a rook on the e-file some kind of way. So short is now completely on the defensive with 1 minute and 32 seconds left. Kasparov with 44 seconds. And now queen takes d5 check, king moves to h8, sacrificing a bishop as Kasparov. What does he have planned?
He can take on g2, but the question is how much compensation he really does have.
And he's going down with queen h2 check, king to f1. And he now can... And he's played rook to d8.
Skewering the queen to the bishop. It can retreat and keep the defense.
And keep the e8 square particularly, but something like a6, if he gets a rook on the e-file, the game is over. If he gets a rook on the e-file, the game will absolutely be over. So what can he do here? He doesn't want to give away his bishop.
This looks very suspicious for white.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's taken... And Kasparov now taking on g3. The threat is mate on f1.
And you don't have queen f3 because of knight h2 check, so rook e2 is forced.
Rook e2 and the d3 bishop is hanging. I mean, that's a bishop
that
can just be captured, and it has been taken. Rook takes d3.
Recovering some of the material.
Recovering, it looks like almost all the material except for one pawn. Black is still down a pawn, but it doesn't matter here. Garry Kasparov on the attack. He sees a king yet again that he can mate, and you see him focus on this position. He's threatening to take the pawn on f4 also with his queen. Knight to c5 attacking the rook. Not sure how that deals with the check threat. Material is now even, and his king has nowhere to hide, so he has to come back. Kasparov has a draw if he wants it.
No.
And he doesn't want it. Queen h4 threatening mate on h1. How do you deal with this one? Looks like g3 is the only move, but that's going to lose a critical pawn. This looks busted yet again. The mate threat on h1. What to do? It looks like no moves, Alejandro.
I don't see any good way of defending. You could also try to put the rook away on the e-file, but then that meets queen f2 checkmate.
It's over. It's over. This one is busted. The mate threat is going to seal the deal. He's played g3.
Yeah, but after g3,
and that's just give me the pawn. And come on, this is definitely done.
No, it's completely winning. You
18 seconds and ticking down, and now knight to e6, rook
Desperado,
g8.
just desperado.
Desperate threat. Knight takes on g7, and does he have some kind of perpetual or something? No, knight h2 check, ignoring the knight on g7. That knight's not doing anything. Now it's just discovered attacks with the rook, depending on where you go. If you take the knight, then the queen penetrates. 7 seconds left on his clock.
This is winning.
This is done. Only 4 seconds to go. He's finally moved his king. Where is the discovery that does the knockout blow? Instead of the discovery, knight f3 check.
Oh, also very strong.
And king f2. And this move, Kasparov just relishing the possibilities here. And now he's played rook to h3 with check. The king has marched up the board to e3 and queen f4, king d3, knight d4, checkmate.
95 checkmate.
95 checkmate on the board to finish off the match. A scintillating game by Garry Kasparov yet again. Completely dominating this match.
What an attack.
What?
Wow.
We could say that about a number of games, but that one was incredible.
Just beautiful. The coordination between the knight, the queen. He didn't care about the bishop on d7. He knew what was important in the game. Put the rook on e8. Make sure the king doesn't march all the way. Make it weak on f1. The threats were too much. Yes, you were up a bishop and a pawn, but who cares?
The thing is, you look at him play this kind of chess, putting all his pieces on the right squares, attacking with just bravado and style and flair, and you can have a pawn. It doesn't matter. Look at him, very contented right now. Of course, the score is something that he will remember for a long time, a very satisfying victory. You look at this, 8.5, 1.5. There is no way, I guarantee, you would have guessed this particular score before the match started. Some were even saying maybe it's Short, who's on form, who might be able to win this match those doubts are now completely erased because Kasparov has shown why he is indeed a legend in this game, one of the greatest players ever to play. Well, we will be back with an interview with Kasparov and Short in a moment. Just an incredible match. Please join us right after this.
The diner. What an exciting thing for the West End. It's not just about food, it's not just about chess. You know, it's a place for people to come and spend their day, hang out, and just kind of talk ideas. Before we move along, I just really want to say thank you to the chess campus and give them a round of applause.
Come on, you guys, help me out here.
What do you want us to do?
Well, you tell me. Let's see. On the count of 3.
Sure.
1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Come and forfeit someone. What would you like?
If you want to play, Kasparov, head over here.
Grandmasters Kasparov and Short will step before your board. You'll make your move. They'll make their reply, and then wait until they come back around to you.
We've got a couple of simultaneous exhibitions, so I'm giving one, Garry's giving one. We're playing 20 opponents each. Well, it's mainly for fun, I would say.
It's always nice to accompany big events with simultaneous exhibitions because you can bring kids and chess fans to face Grandmaster at the board. I mean, not just to hear the story, not just to follow the games, but to also, move the pieces.
I have sat on the other side in these exhibitions a number of times, and those were important moments in my chess career.
It's a part of the promotion, and I hope they'll enjoy it.
Play chess? Of course I do.
That's the end of his life.
Beyond the wall.
Welcome to the showdown in St. Louis. A big round of applause for our players. The player who chooses the gold pen will have the white pieces in the first game. And Grandmaster Kasparov, if you would do us the honors of picking your poison. Garry chose the gold pen, so he'll have white in game 1. Nigel, just to make sure I'm honest.
Yep.
And I'm very excited to tell you that the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis, in partnership with Norway Chess and the London Chess Classic, are announcing the 2015 Grand Chess Tour. We're very lucky to have been inspired in this project by Garry Kasparov. He's connected our 3 events and the organizers from each of them, and now we have the Grand Chess Tour.
And we are back with the Battle of the Legends, now over. Grandmaster Garry Kasparov winning the match with a commanding score. And we are with Nigel Short. Nigel, this was pretty much as one-sided as it could get. You weren't able to get into the match at all. He really played some scintillating games.
Yes, he played, I think he played very well. Unfortunately, chess is a sport and you need energy, and that was what was completely lacking in my own game. So actually I felt my energy going down throughout
Was that
this match.
What was the reason for that?
I think I just didn't arrive in good physical condition, and I have not been sleeping. Again, I woke up at 2:30 last night, and I have not been to sleep since then. And this is about rapid reactions, calculations, and when you're sleep deprived, then it's very difficult. So, you know, I mean, basically you're playing hundreds of points worse than normal. And yeah, he played well, no question about it. He played some very good chess. So nothing to, you know, I don't want to take anything away, but, you know, I'm just disappointed. I was just, at some moment I realized I'm just gone, completely gone.
The momentum was, it happens especially in Blitz.
Just Blitz,
once the momentum starts.
No energy, actually. This was the key thing. I mean, I think I had chances in the first game, and then, you know, things started to, it went from bad to worse. And the last game, I just didn't see anything at all. I mean, I basically didn't see any single move. So that was, yeah, not good.
So what do you do next time, or what do you do in matches like this one? You did play in the Thai Open, which you won.
Yeah, I mean the problem was the scheduling. I'd agreed to play in Thailand ages ago, and you know, I had offered 2 dates for this match. I said I can do this at the end of March, and I said if I'm really pushed, I can do it. I can do it now, and this was. I knew it was going to be hellish because, you know, Garry is very, very difficult even when you're absolutely on the top of your game. So, you know, I mean, it was a massacre today, really, pretty horrible. As I say, the first game was an interesting game. I don't know what the engines say. I felt I had chances in that first game, but then suddenly it went. And
we were talking about this yesterday on the air, that Kasparov still looks like a top 10 player. I mean,
yeah,
he just looks fresh. His ideas are fresh. He fights hard.
Yeah, I think he's, you know, I mean, he would have to work on his openings and stuff because yeah, he's done some work for this match, but he has an incredible amount of experience on all sorts of positions. So
we don't expect to see him coming back anytime soon.
No,
or if at all, we doubt that.
I mean, he certainly won't be playing classical chess. That's but he still understands something about the game,
yeah,
apparently.
I would say so.
Yeah.
What do you do after this? Where's your next event?
Well, my next event is very unclear. I'm actually going to Nicaragua tomorrow, and I'm doing some coaching there, hopefully. It won't be too strenuous. It'll be at a beach house. So
there won't be any Garry Kasparov rolling around.
Yeah.
Either.
So, you know, obviously, I'm incredibly disappointed. My chess was really awful. You know, actually, even I don't think, even in my worst nightmare, I couldn't score this few points. It was disgusting, really. So you know, very disappointed. Garry played well. Credit to him, and. Yeah, he's the greatest player in chess history, in my opinion. So had a much longer reign than Bobby Fischer. Bobby probably burned brighter for a short period of time, but Garry just went on winning and winning for many years.
Well, we appreciate the frank admission and graciously coming down to be interviewed, and we wish you luck in your future endeavors.
Thanks.
Grandmaster Nigel short after a very difficult match against Garry Kasparov. We will be back in a moment, right after this.
2014 was a great year for chess. Chess24 brought you live interactive broadcasts from top tournaments. A play zone where you can take on opponents from all around the world 24/7. Interactive beginners courses, ensuring you pick up the basics fast while having fun. A tactics trainer to sharpen your chess by solving puzzles adapted to your level. Hundreds of interactive videos. Chess24 on mobiles and tablets. Most features are free, but limited for registered members. Chess24 is offering a special premium membership for just $9.99 per month or $99 per year. See you at chess24.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Matheny. I've been part of some great clubs, and now I'm part of another. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis, right here in the chess capital of the U.S. Our world-renowned center is dedicated to teaching, playing, and promoting the sport. Because chess has been proven to enhance academic performance, our Scholastic Outreach program now works with over 100 schools. So whether you've played for years or never before, come experience all that chess has to offer.
And we are back with the Battle of the Legends, where former world champion Garry Kasparov completely dominated this matchup, 8.5 to 1.5. Garry, first of all, congratulations. You look like the Garry of old. This was a tremendous victory for you. How are you feeling after such a match?
I feel great. I have to confess that I'm also surprised. It was, very difficult day in the beginning. I played quite poorly the opening, and then I just realized that my only chance is to create big complications, and the game was hanging in balance. I think Nigel was better at one point, and in the time trouble, actually, I managed to win. And after this game, I felt that it's time to play as I played not even 20, 30 years ago. So just to have fun and to attack. So and I just did it in every game, and it worked. Every single game you were attacking pawns for the initiative. Were you calculating all these lines or just feeling like, that looks good, I'm going to work something out? No, that's what made me feel very, very happy and proud today, that I played many very good moves just by hand. So it was as if, I've been practicing. So, it doesn't happen often, even when I haven't played, my best years, that you actually see the move and it's the right move. So like in the last game, c5, d5, and then I already see that knight g4 and queen goes back and a combination. Or in game 4, you just, you play g4, and then I didn't even need time, so just all the moves, they're so natural. King h1, rook g1, bishop goes there, queen goes there, then bishop. It's just like all combinations, they were, just flying around, and you just have to just make a move to put it on board. And you were playing pawn moves that were shocking for us. There were games where you just play like f5, you pawns on g5. You let him play the move e4 in the last game, and you played c5 and then d5. And yeah, but I needed, because I had two bishops, and again, if nothing happens, he'll develop his knight from e1, and my king is slightly exposed, and pawns are weak. But there was a moment where his position was still hanging, so that's his king on h1 was actually on g1, but after queen c5 check, he had to go to h1, and then my knight can jump on h5, g4. So this is a moment when you have to create an initiative, or white is better. And so I smell that it was a moment just to create something, and after when I played knight queen e8, I knew it's over. That was an amazing maneuver. Yeah, the c5 back to e3 down to e8. And eventually it goes on h2. Yeah, and then just spinning around. It's quite funny that my queen always attacked there, because in the first game also I've been thinking how to bring my queen on h2, but it didn't work out. So it worked out actually in the last game. When you're playing that well, at some point you had such a big score that a couple of draws would be enough. Were you thinking, no, I want to win every single game I play? No, as I said yesterday, for me it was not a match. It was just 10 games, and I just want to play each game. I enjoyed it immensely because, again, I'm not playing anymore, professionally, and it was a very rare opportunity to play good chess and just to enjoy it. And it worked, I could smell, that it's not just about winning the game, but it's just I could find good moves, and again, tremendous enjoyment. Well, we could take a look at the score for a second.
just a big score. How could you explain these numbers? We see that you did draw the first game. You even lost yesterday in a blitz game where you lost on time and being unaware. But after that, it was just win after win after win. Did you actually win 7 games in a row? I mean, I didn't even look at that stat. Make it even worse. 7 games in a row. Could you explain? Nigel Short is still a top 100 player. He's 60th in the world. He's in form. He's coming off of this tie open win. You couldn't have suspected 8.5, 1.5.
No. I was very, very nervous yesterday. So I was less nervous today. But yes, I was extremely nervous because I didn't know how I could play. I mean, and you know, game 3, you know, I was rusty and you could feel it. You know, I forgot about my clock. So not that I had, you know, better position. Probably it was roughly even. Maybe I'm slightly better, but I just totally, you know, just ignored time, and that's what I was afraid of before the match. And I wasn't sure that I can overcome, you know, lack of practice. But you know, it's the what's happened, you know, in games 3, 4, and 5 yesterday. I mean, gave me, you know, a lot of confidence. I was a bit upset that I didn't finish him off in game 1 because that was such a good game, but. In fact, game 1 convinced me that I could play well. So that's this. It's not that, you know, I couldn't create complications, and I, as I did before, you know, in my life, professional chess life, and I knew that, you know, I would rather, you know, create position where I attack, because what's happened in game 3, and that's I felt very uncomfortable. I mean, at some point he created some threats. They were not big threats, some of them were imaginary, but I didn't feel comfortable because, again, this is where the lack of practice could, you know, could play against me. So that's why I decided today, let's attack. I mean, I just have to create threats, just attack. And in game 1, you know, which is, again, I'm sure there were many mistakes, but I was quite proud of the few moves I made there, like position was A5 and then F6, you know, somehow black played positionally, and despite, you know, being exchanged down, I think I managed to stay in the game, and Nigel collapsed, and I think it was difficult for him to recover after this game.
Well, those of us who were used to watching you dominate tournaments back in the 80s and the 90s and grew up under your reign as champion, remember this kind of style from you. We don't expect you, we can't even hope that you'll come back to play classical games, but will you play more of these exhibition matches? I mean, it was a thrill to just watch. You still have the old magic.
Yeah, maybe rapid, but again, it's tough. So I will consider, you know, but
maybe a Kasparov Carlsen match.
No.
We see something like that.
Yes, you want to see me massacred. No, it's still a very, very, very different league. I mean, Magnus and all top players. It's maybe in blitz I can resist. I still probably will be losing, but in blitz maybe I can resist. In rapid, no way, because it's too much pressure, and I have to spend hours and hours and days and weeks and weeks, and I just simply don't have time. And again, my mind is not working the same way as before. In blitz, probably, if I play, blitz tournaments top 10, definitely I will not be the last one. But I doubt very much I could fight with Magnus or Caruana or Aronian these days.
Well, watching you play today, it seems like you could fight with anybody. But
I will fight. I mean, it's about the outcome. Yes, definitely I will give them a good fight for their money.
So we really had a treat at this match today, at these 2 days. What's your next venture? Tell us what you're going to next. You're always going somewhere. No,
I have a speech on the 29th in Chicago, so it's a motivational speech. But tomorrow is an important day here in St. Louis. There will be first meeting of all Kasparov Chess Foundations, all 5, New York, Johannesburg, Brussels, Singapore, Mexico City. We're all getting here together to talk about, our work on global scale, how we can maximize the effect of, exchanging experience and information. And I have to say that, it's probably part of, of this success. The secret of the success is that, St. Louis is really a magic place. So I felt so good, just because it's like a temple of chess. And, I couldn't renege on the expectations of people who fill this temple.
Well, St. Louis clearly loves you, because this match was tremendous. Congratulations on a fantastic score and a fantastic result. And we want to see more of this, because it was absolutely tremendous. Thank you so much. Well, let us go to a commercial after looking at this match by Garry Kasparov, incredible champion. is Kasparov one for the ages, and certainly something he'll put up and remember in his own collection. We'll be back after this.
I'm Mike Matheny. Whether you play chess for fun or want to boost your child's academic performance, come visit the Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis, right here in the chess capital of the U.S. From a welcoming, diverse environment to a scholastic outreach program, now in over 100 schools, our center, across from the World Chess Hall of Fame in the Central West End, has it all. So whether you've played for years or never before, we invite you to experience all chess has to offer.
Well, we are back to close what I want to call a show, but is really more a massacre. A battle of the legends turned out to be completely one-sided as Garry Kasparov, the living legend, one of the greatest players of all time, really just showed his skill and dominated in this match. Alejandro, it just leaves you breathless, speechless. Superlatives are not enough to describe the victory that he had today.
It's hard to still wrap my mind around it. He won 5 games straight today, without counting the ones that he won yesterday.
7 in a row.
7 in a row against one of the top players in the world. This is Nigel Short. I mean, he wasn't playing some grandmaster that just became a GM or some international master. This is Nigel Short, and he made it look amazing the way that he played. Initiative, sacrifices. He was Garry Kasparov, and he was unstoppable.
He was unstoppable, and you saw the jubilation on his face. I mean, he felt that old magic, the fact that he could still come up with some interesting ideas. This last idea we saw with C5, D5, and then the queen, the way it just pirouetted around the board and ended up attacking on the other side. How did he do that? How did he pull that off? Just tremendous chess. And he says he doesn't have a chance against the top players. I guess there's sometimes the leagues are so high we can't even judge ourselves. We're not in that company, but man, it would be great to see.
That would be hard to imagine and amazing to see. He played extraordinary chess today. He was able to prove that he still had it. He still had that killer instinct. He had that way of maneuvering with the pieces, that way of making any position look cohesive, like it makes sense, and hey, wow, there's a kill.
Kill is the word. Well, we want to just thank everyone for their participation. I'm still dazzled and dazed by the display I just saw for Fat Chimp, Spectrum Studios, the Chess Club of St. Louis and Scholastic Center, and Kingside Diner, everyone who helped make this production into something magical indeed. And Alejandro Ramirez, Grandmaster, thanks so much for joining me in this broadcast. It was a lot of fun. It's something I'm sure we will remember. And our next broadcast will be Norway Chess 2015 in June. Check the listings at uschesschamp.com. Guys, see you from the Temple of Chess here, St. Louis.